Chapter 487. Sensing his abnormality, the people around him looked over. Eldest young master, what's wrong? That man stared intently at Chu Luyue, his lips tightly shut. Seeing him like this, the others didn't dare to ask anything, and all quieted down. On the arena, Elder Chioshi almost fainted from anger when he saw the bright and sincere smile on Chu Luyue's face. What did she mean by "that's enough, right"? Her last attack almost took Zhao Yunji's life. You've gone too far. Yunji already admitted defeat, but you stubbornly refused to stop. You clearly did it on purpose. Chu Luyue blinked. Elder Chioshi, I respect you as a person of virtue and prestige, so I did as you said. Didn't I stop the moment you told me to? After she finished speaking, her fair fingertips lightly turned, and the flame whip quickly retracted and disappeared into her palm. She spread her hands. I believe everyone saw it clearly, right? Elder Chioshi choked. This Chu Luyue was truly cunning. She did stop after he opened his mouth. But who could say that the last attack was unintentional? She had seized the perfect timing, and he couldn't really blame her for it. Then you shouldn't have been so ruthless. You're so young, but you're so vicious. Chu Luyue pondered for a while and asked in return, why? But didn't you say that as long as no lives were lost, you could use any means to win? Could it be that this rule doesn't apply to me? Elder Chioshi's face turned red and white. Chu Luyue had a sharp tongue, and he couldn't argue with her at all. After all, Zhao Yunji did lose. He took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. Then, he said to the black cavalry beside him, hurry up and take Zhao Yunji away to treat her injuries. 2 black guards quickly rushed up and carried Zhao Yunji, who was on the verge of death and covered in wounds, away. Chu Luyue turned around and looked at the black jade board floating in the air. Zhao Yunji's name was nowhere to be seen. Only her name remained, Chu Luyue. Only the winner could stay. Chu Luyue looked around and raised his eyebrows slightly. They seemed to be the first to finish the competition. Match number 53, Chu Luyue wins. Elder Duanmu Chun shouted in a deep voice. Number 101, filling in for number 53. Hearing this, Chu Luyue was finally satisfied and walked down the stage leisurely. Countless pairs of eyes looked over at the same time. Shock, envy, jealousy, admiration. Those gazes had different meanings, but Chu Luyue did not take them to heart. After jumping off the stage, he walked to the resting area that had been prepared beforehand and sat down to watch the battle quietly. Half of these people would become her opponents in the next round. Low voices of discussion came from behind. Chu Luyue actually won. Winning one round might be a coincidence, but to win against 2 rank 5 warriors in a row, it's enough to prove that she really has the strength. I think she's about to break through to rank 4 warrior. When that time comes, it'll be even easier to win. But she's got guts. I heard that Zhao Yunji was brought here by Chen Shiyuan from the Soaring Cloud sect. She had already agreed to enter the Soaring Cloud sect directly. No wonder Elder Chioshi was so angry. For so many years, he had helped the Soaring Cloud sect a lot. Seeing that the Soaring Cloud sect had lost such a good seedling, how could he be indifferent? But he's an elder of the royal family after all. It's not appropriate for him to always do this. I think it's unfair for him to reprimand Chu Luyue just now. If the person who lost was Chu Luyue, he definitely wouldn't come out to reprimand her. Chu Luyue sat leisurely and listened to these words. Suddenly, she felt that there seemed to be a substantial gaze in the crowd that fell on her. She was almost instinctively alarmed. She looked up. A man in a blue robe came into her sight. He looked to be in his 30s and had an ordinary appearance. But when she saw his eyes, Chu Luyue's heart skipped a beat. She would recognize those eyes even if they turned to ashes. Jiang Yuqing. It was obvious that he had changed his appearance, restrained his aura, and sat in the crowd. The people around him should be his followers, and they were also disguised as ordinary people. No matter who saw these people, they wouldn't give them a second glance. But she was different. She had seen Jiang Yuqing's face for so many years, and she couldn't forget it even if she wanted to. And his pair of eyes that seemed gentle and affectionate, but were actually sinister and ruthless, were like a brand that was deeply engraved in her mind. Seeing that Jiang Yuqing seemed to have noticed her gaze, Chu Luyue immediately pretended to look away unintentionally. Even though her heart was in turmoil, the expression on her face was incomparably calm. Even the curvature of her lips did not change in the slightest, making it impossible for others to see through her. No one knew how much strength she had to rely on to suppress the killing intent that was surging crazily in her heart. Everything in the royal family's ancestral hall seemed to have happened yesterday. It was vivid in her mind, and incomparably vivid. However, her heart no longer felt the pain of being betrayed. There was only the thought of tearing him into pieces. She closed her eyes. That's right. Someone had said that Jiang Yuqing would come. She had actually been waiting, but Jiang Yuqing didn't appear until the competition started. So she threw this matter to the back of her mind. She didn't expect him to change his identity and blend in with the crowd. Why did he do that? With his current identity, he could have come openly. Why did he have to put in so much effort? And more importantly, just now, when he looked at her, what was he looking at? Was it because she was the first to win the competition? Or was it something else? Chu Luiyue opened her eyes and looked around casually. She looked exactly the same as before. She looked completely relaxed, as if she had won the competition. She could still feel Jiang Yuqing looking at her. But the emotions in her heart had gradually calmed down. Anyway, she had already changed her identity, and her appearance and age were different from before. She didn't believe that Jiang Yuqing would still be able to recognize her. Thinking of this, her mood became better. Now it seemed that she was in the dark, while he was in the clear. On the other side, Jiang Yuqing had been staring at Chu Luiyue since the first time he saw the smile on her face. At first, he really thought that it was that person, but after looking carefully for a while, he felt that he was thinking too much. Although their smiles were very similar, their facial features were still quite different. Moreover, Chu Luiyue did look like she was only 14 or 15 years old, and that person had already been buried in the sea of fire. How could he still appear? Jiang Yuqing rubbed the space between his eyebrows. It seemed that he had been too tired during this period of time, which was why he was thinking about such nonsense. Go and investigate Chu Luiyue's background. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 488. The people beside him looked at each other and found it strange. Could it be because Chu Luiyue had displayed strength that far exceeded her level? But it didn't seem that simple. When eldest young master saw Chu Luiyue for the first time, his reaction was very unusual. Although they thought so, they didn't show any abnormalities and said respectfully in a low voice, "Yes." After Jiang Yuqing denied the thought in his heart, he shifted his gaze elsewhere. There were hundreds of matches going on in the square at the same time. Among them, there were many more outstanding matches than Chu Luiyue and Zhao Yunji's. But for some reason, he couldn't focus on the other matches. Instead, he would look at Chu Luiyue from time to time. Every time he found that he couldn't help but look at Chu Luiyue, Jiang Yuqing would secretly warn himself that this was the last time. But time and time again, it seemed like he couldn't control himself. Even if he forced himself not to look at her, his mind kept recalling the smile he saw for the first time. Bright, brilliant, pure, and full of spirit and craftiness. Even if the appearance was only 30% similar, this smile had 50% of the charm of that woman from many years ago. Jiang Yuqing pinched the bridge of his nose in frustration. No, this isn't right. He came today to secretly check on these Daijing Yuan Meridian cultivators. He couldn't let other things disturb his mind. After repeating this several times in his heart, he finally let out a heavy sigh. Chu Luiyue naturally didn't know Jiang Yuqing's inner turmoil. On the contrary, she had completely calmed down. Before coming to West Hill, she had already made sufficient preparations. So after a short moment of surprise, she quickly accepted this matter. The most important thing now was to find out what they were planning to do by holding this Wanzheng competition. She didn't believe a single word of what Elder Qiushi said earlier. Shangguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing definitely didn't have such foresight and breadth of mind. They clearly had other motives. Other than that, she needed to investigate the current situation in the Imperial court as soon as possible. Who was it that had betrayed her back then? And who was still standing by her side? Chu Luiyue leaned against the chair and rested his chin on one hand, deep in thought. She was weak now, so she needed to find some reliable people to help her. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the square. Chu Luiyue looked up and saw that another match had ended. Another name disappeared from the black jade board. Not long after, two names disappeared almost at the same time. After she was the first to finish the competition, the other contestants in the square seemed to have been stimulated and sped up the competition. The competition instantly became more intense. Of course, this also led to more and more matches being decided. Time passed bit by bit. More and more names disappeared from the jade board. The cultivators who were carried off almost continuously. Because it was a rare opportunity, everyone wanted to win desperately. Therefore, they all used their special skills, and their injuries were particularly tragic. Some who didn't want to admit defeat were beaten until they were covered in blood and passed out. There were messy bloodstains everywhere in the square. The people in the audience seats became more and more excited, and even began to shout and cheer with red faces. Many people had already taken their seats beside Chu Luiyue. Seeing this, those from the Tianling dynasty were still okay, but those from outside Heaven's canopy were more or less shocked. Chu Luiyue was used to it. Gradually, the people next to her seemed to have started chatting with each other. Whether they wanted to be friends or to test each other, everyone had their own thoughts. And for a moment, they were a bit friendly. However, no one took the initiative to talk to Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue didn't mind. She leisurely watched the competition on the field, glancing at the names on the jade board from time to time. Ah, are you crazy? A hysterical scream suddenly came from the square. Chu Luiyue looked over and found that the person who was screaming was a young man. And this person wasn't unfamiliar to her. It was one of the disciples from the Lingyun sect who was with Zhao Yunji. At this moment, he was holding his bleeding arm and looking at the young man in front of him in panic and anger. Are you a beast? You actually eat human flesh. Once this was said, everyone was shocked. The young man looked to be about 16 or 17 years old. He was wearing a grayish-white linen shirt that didn't fit him. Probably because it was too shabby, the clothes didn't look like it originally did. Although he wasn't short, he looked very skinny. His bones swayed in his clothes, as if he was wearing a sack. He had short, golden hair that was soft and shiny, reflecting a faint light under the sun. His hair covered most of his face, but one could still see his youthful face and sharp chin. At this moment, he was biting a piece of bloody flesh in his mouth. It was the flesh that he had bitten off the arm of the young man in front of him. He spat out the piece of flesh expressionlessly, and coldly spat out a word. Stinky. His expression and tone were so calm and indifferent, as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. But it was this appearance that made one's heart turn cold. The young man standing in front of him choked. He didn't dare to ask where the word stinky came from. He instinctively felt that he didn't want to know the answer. The onlookers also unconsciously quieted down for a moment. Everyone could see that this young man wasn't simple. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and frowned slightly, as if he was disgusted. The young man's heart couldn't help but beat violently. A sense of uneasiness quickly spread from the bottom of his heart. What do you want to do? He asked fiercely, his voice trembling slightly. However, the golden-haired young man didn't say anything. He only tilted his head and looked at him. Immediately, his figure suddenly took half a step back and arched his waist. His whole body was filled with amazing tension. The next moment, his figure rushed out quickly like a lone wolf in the wilderness. This time he raised his hand. His calloused hand turned into a claw and grabbed the young man's neck tightly. His speed was so fast that the young man was pushed to the ground before he could react. Cough cough. I admit defeat. Cough cough. The young man raised his head and met the cold brown eyes under the blonde hair. He shuddered and admitted defeat without hesitation. The golden-haired young man's eyes flashed with a touch of regret, as if it was a pity that he couldn't continue fighting. But in the end, he still let go of his hand. Even if he won the match, his expression didn't change. After looking around, he walked down the stage. Then, he walked straight to Chu Luiyue. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 489. The young man had an unruly wildness about him, and he looked like a young beast. Chu Liyue's gaze swept past the jade slab and landed on him. The two of them looked at each other. Chang Wanzhou. Chu Liyue was the first to speak with a smile. The young man nodded. Chu Liyue was a little surprised. This young man seemed to have come from the border or a desolate swamp. She didn't expect him to have such an elegant name. This name and his temperament were really worlds apart. My name is Chu Liyue. The young man glanced at her. I know. So many people called her just now, and he heard it clearly. Chu Liyue was stunned for a moment and couldn't help but laugh. This young man didn't seem to be as unreasonable as he seemed on the surface. On the contrary, he seemed to be a little naive. I need your help, Chang Wanzhou said straightforwardly. Chu Liyue leaned back in her chair with interest. Oh, what kind of help? Most people wouldn't ask strangers for help easily, but it was rare for him to say it so confidently. I want one of your kindling. Chu Liyue's smile froze. What did you say? Chang Wanzhou looked at her expression and frowned slightly. I won't ask for your help for free. In return, I can be your follower for 10 days. Chu Liyue opened her mouth. Do you know what you're saying? 20 days. It's not a matter of time but 30 days. That's the most. Chu Liyue rubbed between her eyebrows, feeling a headache. This child seemed to be quite good at fighting. But why did it seem like there was something wrong with his brain? Chang Wanzhou, right? Come here and sit down first. Chang Wanzhou was about to shake his head, but Chu Liyue beat him to it. If you don't sit down, I won't agree. Chang Wanzhou glanced at her, then walked to the seat next to her and sat down. Chu Liyue inadvertently glanced at him and found that his sitting posture was very standard. His shoulders and back were straight, and his aura was awe-inspiring, as if he had specially learned it. If one did not look at his shabby clothes, his actions would make him look like a noble young master that could only be nurtured by an aristocratic family. After sitting down, he looked straight at Chu Liyue, obviously waiting for her answer. Chu Liyue sighed softly in his heart and raised a finger. First of all, this is not how you ask for help. Secondly, even if you agree to be my follower for a year, I'm not interested. Thirdly, do you know what a fire seed is? Chang Wanzhou's cold and unruly gaze swept across her fingers. Firstly, I'm the one who's asking for your help. Naturally, I'll do it my way. Secondly, I've said it before. 1 month at most. 1 year is absolutely impossible. Third, I know what kindling is. Aren't you a celestial physician? Naturally, you have a fire seed. Chu Liyue's eyes widened slightly. Who told you that as long as you're a celestial physician, you have a fire seed? Chang Wanzhou's face was full of vigilance. Of course someone told me. Chu Liyue facepalmed. That's a liar who lied to you. Only a top celestial physician can condense a fire seed. With my current level, I can't do it no matter what. I'm sorry, I can't help you with this. Chang Wanzhou suddenly stood up, his face full of anger. Who are you calling a liar? Chu Liyue was taken aback. She did not expect Chang Wanzhou to have such a big reaction to this sentence. It seemed that the person who told him this was very important to him. Ahem, that's not what I meant. I mean, you don't seem to know much about celestial physician. I really can't help you with this matter. However, there are many outstanding celestial physician in West Hill. You can look for them. Seeing that Chu Liyue's expression was sincere and did not seem to be lying, Chang Wanzhou did not continue to be angry. I don't need any other celestial physician. Only you can help me, he said stubbornly. Chu Liyue did not immediately respond. The flames that she created were indeed different from others. Could it be? Chang Wanzhou came for this. The so-called fire seed was condensed by a celestial physician's force into flames. A celestial physician would place a fire seed in another cultivator's body. The latter would be able to use their force to continuously grow the fire seed, allowing them to use flames in battle. As the cultivator's realm increased, the fire seed in their body would also grow. In the end, some could even completely integrate the power of the fire seed and become a celestial physician. This was also the method that some people who wanted to become a celestial physician would use. However, how could it be so easy to condense a fire seed? It would consume a lot of the celestial physician's force and energy, but the success rate was extremely low. For a celestial physician, Refining a fire seed was a thankless task. No one would be willing to help others refine a fire seed for free. However, in Chang Wanzhou's eyes, it seemed to be an easy task. Chu Luiyue looked at his stubbornness and felt a headache coming on. It seemed to be difficult to persuade him. You don't want to help me? Chang Wanzhou asked belatedly. Chu Luiyue shrugged helplessly. I'm sorry. It's not that I don't want to help, but I really can't. Chang Wanzhou said firmly. You don't want to help me. This time it was a statement. Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed slightly. However, Chang Wanzhou didn't say anything else. He turned his head and looked at the arena. His expression was as indifferent and calm as ever, as if he didn't care too much about this matter. However, Chu Luiyue was suddenly curious as she leaned closer and asked softly, Why? Why do you want a fire seed? You're so talented as a martial artist. There's no need for you to be a celestial physician. Chang Wanzhou glanced at her. I don't want to be a celestial physician. Then what do you want a fire seed for? Chu Luiyue was even more confused. Chang Wanzhou paused. I want a fire seed to prolong my life. As he spoke, a trace of loneliness flashed across the young man's young and arrogant face. I'm looking for someone, but I haven't found her yet. I'm afraid that I'll die before I find her. His tone was indifferent. However, Chu Luiyue realized that when he said that he was about to die, he didn't have any emotional fluctuations. However, when he mentioned that he couldn't find that person, he revealed a trace of unconcealable sadness. It was as if that person was more important than his life. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Is that person very important to you? The expression on Chang Wanzhou's face had returned to normal. Hearing this, his lips pursed slightly, his chin tensed up, and he said firmly, She's the most important person to me. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to be touched by something soft. She didn't say anything else. She just leaned back in her chair and looked at the arena. The two of them were silent, as if they had already let this matter go. Time passed by bit. There were fewer and fewer names on the black jade board. More and more people were being carried off the arena. When half of the competition was over, Chu Luiyue finally spoke softly. I can help you. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 490. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised when she said that. She wasn't the kind of person who was overflowing with sympathy. Most of the time, it was more appropriate to say that she was ruthless and decisive. But for some reason, when she looked at Chang Wanzhou's lonely expression and said those words, she actually felt sad for a moment. This feeling was rare. She had never been willing to take the initiative to provoke people who had nothing to do with her, so as to avoid trouble. But Chang Wanzhou seemed to be different. Really, Chang Wanzhou heard her words and looked back. His brown eyes, covered by soft golden hair, were so bright that they seemed to be blooming for a moment. Chu Luiyue suddenly stopped hesitating. The corners of her lips curled up, and she smiled. I've always been a man of my word. But according to the agreement, you have to be my follower for a month. Chang Wanzhou immediately nodded. Okay. After saying that, he stretched out his hand and bent his pinky. The agreement is the proof. Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched. What are you doing? Chang Wanzhou said matter-of-factly. This is the highest level of agreement between people. Since you and I have an agreement, you can't go back on your word. Chu Luiyue. Looking at Chang Wanzhou's convinced expression, Chu Luiyue suddenly thought of something. Did that person teach you this too? As expected, the young man nodded. Before this, she was the only one I've made an agreement with. You're the second. Why did it sound like he was holding a pinky promise with her? Because he thought highly of her. Chu Luiyue's eyes turned, but she calmly stretched out her pinky and made a pinky promise with him. The young man's hand was as cold as ice. Chu Luiyue glanced at him without batting an eyelid. No wonder he said that he needed a fire seed to prolong his life. This kid looked no different from an ordinary person, but his internal organs had already been invaded by the cold evil qi. Most of the force in his body should have been frozen. Even in this state, he still had such strong combat strength. She really didn't know how amazing his true strength was. Come here. After making a pinky promise, Chu Luiyue hooked his finger at him. Chang Wanzhou leaned towards her in confusion. When he got closer, Chu Liyue finally saw his face clearly. Then he was slightly stunned. This was actually an excessively beautiful young man. His skin was very white, almost translucent. Under his short blonde hair was a pair of brown eyes that were cold and proud, but pure and clean, like the snow on a mountain. Her nose bridge was high, and her lips were shaped like rose petals. The corners of her mouth were naturally upturned. His smooth jawline and sharp chin made him look clean and youthful. If it weren't for the fact that his facial features and demeanor were indeed that of a young man, Chu Liyue would almost have suspected that this was a beautiful and moving girl. Chu Liyue raised his hand and ruffled his golden hair. Chang Wanzhou was stunned at first, then frowned. "What are you doing?" Looking at his messy appearance, Chu Liyue smiled and shook his little finger. "Since the alliance has been established, it's effective, right? Today is your first day as my attendant." In other words, as an attendant, one should have the self-awareness of an attendant. What's the big deal about ruffling his hair? Chang Wanzhou stared at her for a while. A hint of anger seemed to flash in his beautiful eyes, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He just turned his head and sat upright. After a while he said coldly, "Got it." Chu Liyue almost laughed out loud. This Chang Wanzhou looks cold and unapproachable, but in fact, he seems to be very easy to coax. She now understood why the person he was looking for deliberately deceived him with a small lie. With this thought, the last bit of conflict in Chu Liyue's heart completely dissipated. It just so happened that she was alone and helpless in West Hill. It would be good to have one more helper. Not to mention other things, Chang Wanzhou's talent and strength were very strong. His level should be at the peak of the 5th level now. According to his age, he could definitely be considered a top genius. "Where are you from?" Chu Liyue asked. "Nanjiang." "Nanjiang." "The Nanjiang of the Tianling dynasty." Chu Liyue's eyes widened slightly. Seeing Chang Wanzhou nod, Chu Liyue was even more shocked. The Tianling dynasty had a total of 4 major territories, and they were all barren lands. Among them, the southern border was even more deserted. There were swamps everywhere, and poisonous creatures were everywhere. Ordinary cultivators would die if they went there. He actually came from there. "You. Who brought you here?" For a cultivator with a Daijing Yuan meridian, he went all the way to Nanjiang to bring her back. "This was too. No one brought me here." Chang Wanzhou said, "I grew up in Nanjiang. I came when Thousand Reed Lake started to dry up." Chu Liyue was dumbfounded. Seeing that she didn't speak, Chang Wanzhou added, "It's been exactly 5 months." Chu Liyue took a while to recover. "So you're saying that you came to the West Hill from the Thousand Reed Lake of the southern border alone?" Chang Wanzhou nodded. Chu Liyue was shocked. What kind of person was he? He was only in his teens, but he could actually walk out of Nanjiang alone and cross thousands of miles to West Hill. A thought suddenly flashed through her mind. You came to West Hill to find that person?" As expected, Chang Wanzhou said with certainty, "Yes." This answer was more determined and serious than before. Chu Liyue asked hesitantly, "But every participant is brought by someone. Who did you go to Xianli Garden with?" Looking at Chang Wanzhou, how could he have gone alone? Chang Wanzhou frowned. "That person seems to be called Yu Minhan." "I don't know him, but he told me that as long as I win first place in the Wanzhong competition and become famous, I'll be able to find the person I'm looking for." Chu Liyue immediately understood. That person called Yu Minhan must have discovered Chang Wanzhou's talent and deliberately tried to rope him in and trick him into participating in the Wanzhong competition. Chang Wanzhou came from Nanjiang and was inexperienced. When he heard that he could find the person he was looking for, he naturally agreed. "That Yu Minhan, do you know which sect he is from?" Chang Wanzhou's expression froze and he shook his head. "I didn't ask." Chu Liyue was speechless. This child was really honest. He didn't even know who the other party was before he boarded the other party's pirate ship. "When you signed up, you should have written his name and sect. Didn't you notice?" Chang Wanzhou suddenly fell silent. His golden hair fell down and covered his eyes. However, Chu Liyue inexplicably saw a trace of embarrassment. His fingers curled slightly. After a while he said, "I can't read." Chu Liyue reacted and thought to herself that she was really stupid. Chang Wanzhou grew up in Nanjiang. It was not easy for him to survive until now. Naturally, he did not have the opportunity to read and write. However, just as she was thinking of how to comfort him, Chang Wanzhou suddenly looked up and pointed at the black jade board. But I recognize your name, you. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 491. Chu Liyue's lips curved slightly. She raised her eyebrows and smiled. It seems that we're quite fated. Is the person you're looking for also called by this name? Chang Wanzhou shook his head. I don't know her name. She asked me to call her you, so I recognized this word. Chu Liyue rested her chin on one hand, feeling a little strange. It just so happened to be the same as her name. She asked tentatively. She's from West Hill? Chang Wanzhou nodded. Chu Liyue's brows twitched slightly. This person can't really be a liar, right? In her previous life, after she was born, her father personally gave her the name Yu. After she was conferred the title of princess, no one in West Hill used this word to avoid taboo. Those who were born later were better off and avoided, but those who used this word before changed it to something else. That person said that she was from West Hill, but she said that her name was Yu. Either that was her original name, or she made it up. If it was the former, it would be fine. Chang Wanzhou would recognize that person's face when he saw her. But if it was the latter, Chang Wanzhou's efforts would be in vain. He might not be able to find her in this lifetime. Is she very good to you? Chu Liyue asked. Chang Wanzhou looked at her strangely. Of course. She was the one who gave me my name. Looking at his resolute expression, Chu Liyue swallowed the words that were in her throat. If she told him this now, he would definitely not believe her. He might even be angry with her. It was better to wait for a while and understand more before telling him slowly. Thinking of this, Chu Liyue put away her thoughts and smiled. Your name is indeed very good. Chang Wanzhou turned his head expressionlessly. After a moment he said, Of course. Chu Liyue glanced at him, and saw that his earlobes were slightly red. She held back her laughter, and looked back at the arena. Most of the matches had already ended, and only a small number of people had yet to decide the winner. However, the atmosphere in the square was still very lively. After watching for a while, Chu Liyue suddenly thought of something, and looked at Chang Wanzhou. Oh right, don't bite people in the future. Chang Wanzhou's aura suddenly turned cold. Are you calling me a vicious barbarian? He had heard such words too many times recently. Chu Liyue flicked him on the forehead. What are you thinking? I was afraid that the blood of those people would stain you. Your current situation isn't something that can be solved with a single fire seed. If you want to live longer, you have to be obedient. Chang Wanzhou didn't expect her to mean this. The fierce expression that he had prepared immediately disappeared, and he looked a little embarrassed. According to your strength, you can easily win against most of them. Why do you have to do this? Chu Liyue showed a trace of disdain on his face. The person who fought with you just now has a low aptitude. Don't you hate him too? Chang Wanzhou opened his mouth and lowered his head dejectedly. But I need their blood. Chu Liyue sighed. This child really doesn't know anything about my situation, she said in a low voice. Although the cold and evil aura in your body can be suppressed temporarily with the blood of these cultivators, it will do more harm than good in the long run. Don't do this again in the future, understand? Chang Wanzhou looked at her serious expression and nodded subconsciously. Chu Liyue heaved a sigh of relief. For some reason she felt like she was taking care of a child dong. The sound of a distant bell suddenly rang out, reverberating throughout the entire square. Chu Liyue looked up, and saw that the black cavalry in the distance had knocked on the bronze bell placed in the square. She looked at the black jade board, as if she had sensed something. Indeed, she saw that only half of the name was left on it. Elder Qiushi rose into the air. The Wanzhong competition qualifiers are now over. Congratulations to the 196 winners. Enthusiastic cheers came from the crowd. There were also some people who were dejected, but almost no one cared. The winner was king, and the loser was a bandit. This was the eternal law of Shilling City. Elder Qiushi looked at Chu Liyue and the rest. Tomorrow morning the same envoys, you will meet here. The Wanzhong competition will officially begin. His voice, which was full of energy, clearly fell into everyone's ears. Most of the contestants who had already won couldn't hide their excitement. After you go back today, I hope that you can all have a good rest and prepare for tomorrow's competition. The generous rewards are right in front of you. The doors of the top sects in Xiling will also be open to you. Elder Qiuxi's words were undoubtedly a shot of adrenaline to these people. Everyone became more and more excited. Yes. Chu Luyue smiled, stood up, and said to Chang Wanzhou, "Follow me." Chang Wanzhou nodded and followed him. Many people had already jumped down from the spectator seats to celebrate with the victorious contestants. The entire square was crowded. Chu Luyue and Chang Wanzhou passed through the noisy crowd, intending to leave quietly. Jiang Yuqing stood up and looked at Chu Luyue again. When he saw the golden-haired youth behind Chu Luyue, he couldn't help but frown. He had noticed that the two of them had been talking for a long time, and now they were leaving together. "Do those two know each other?" he asked calmly. The man beside him followed his gaze and immediately said, "That youth came from Nanjiang and seemed to have been unintentionally dragged to participate in the Wanzhong competition. The two of them probably didn't know each other previously." Jiang Yuqing looked at the golden-haired youth carefully. "Is Yuan Meridian? Also check on him." "Yes." Jiang Yuqing turned to leave, but he suddenly saw Chu Luyue turn around and smile, ruffling the youth's hair. The youth seemed a little angry, but he only glared at her and didn't say anything. Chu Luyue pulled him again and left through the crowd. Jiang Yuqing suddenly felt a tinge of displeasure. He didn't know where this feeling came from, but he was indeed angry. That smile shouldn't have appeared again, even if it was just a little similar. "Eldest young master, do you need me to do something?" the man beside him asked softly. Jiang Yuqing said coldly, "No need." With that he turned and left. Chu Luyue teased Chang Wanzhou for a while, and finally stopped when she saw the pale, almost transparent face turn red. It was fine to tease the child, but it wouldn't be good to make him angry. "The place I live in is a little special. You'll know when you follow me. Let's go buy some herbs later and recuperate your body." As Chu Luyue spoke, she had already made a list in her heart. "TSK, this follower isn't cheap." Chang Wanzhou didn't talk much. Hearing her ramble, he mostly nodded. "Stop." A man suddenly blocked in front of Chu Luyue. Chu Luyue looked up and saw an unfamiliar face. "You are." The man didn't look at her. Instead, he looked at Chang Wanzhou and reprimanded him with a frown. "Who allowed you to run around?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 492. With such a rude reprimand, those who didn't know better would think that he was someone from Chang Wanzhou. Chu Luyue had already guessed this person's identity. "You're Yu Minhan?" The man glanced at her impatiently. "That's right." As he spoke, he sneered at Chang Wanzhou. "Did you tell her my identity? What else did you say?" As he spoke, he was about to pull Chang Wanzhou away. Chu Luyue's eyes were cold. She stepped forward and blocked Chang Wanzhou, smiling politely. "I'm sorry, Chang Wanzhou won't go back with you." Yu Minhan sized up Chu Luyue with an ugly expression. "What do you mean by this?" "He's a member of my Azure Dragon gang." When it came to levels, it was very clear. Chu Luyue understood. Oh, so it's another third-rate gang. She had heard of this Azure Dragon gang before. Its status was similar to Eight Paths sect. Among the many sects in Xiling City, it had always been at the bottom. Most of them usually behaved with their tails between their legs. Today they were so arrogant to her, probably because she was an outsider from Heaven's Canopy. "Chang Wanzhou has already told me what happened before. He just came to Xiling to look for someone. And you took this opportunity to coax him into participating in the Wanzhong competition. If I'm not wrong, as his leader, the better his results, the higher the reward you will receive, right?" Chu Luyue hadn't figured out the situation of the Wanzhong competition before, but in these 2 days, she had roughly grasped it. Sure enough, Yu Minhan's expression changed slightly. "Don't talk nonsense." Chu Luyue smiled, confirming her guess. It seemed that the reward was good, but it seemed that everyone was avoiding it. "Whether I'm talking nonsense or not, you and I both know in our hearts. There's no need to be too ostentatious about this." In short, I must take Chang Wanzhou away today. And from today onwards, he has nothing to do with you and the entire Azure Dragon gang. How dare you? Yu Minhan suddenly became anxious. How dare you snatch people from my Azure Dragon gang? As he spoke, he harshly slapped Chu Luyue. Before Chu Luyue could move, a cool breeze blew past her ear. Bang! Chang Wanzhou punched Yu Minhan's heart. Yu Minhan was caught off guard. Fell heavily to the ground. Chang Wanzhou's aura was awe-inspiring, and he wanted to go forward again. Chu Luyue hurriedly pulled him back. All right. It's better to avoid trouble. Besides, she didn't want to waste time and energy on this kind of thing now. She just needed to teach him a lesson and give him a warning. Chang Wanzhou stood still and looked down at Chu Luyue's hand that was holding his wrist. He seemed to want to break free, but in the end, he obediently stayed aside. Chu Luyue's heart softened, and the corners of her lips curled up. In Chang Wanzhou's mind as a follower, it seemed that he should be obedient. Even if he didn't like it in his heart, he silently accepted it. Chu Luyue let go of his hand and chuckled softly. Thank you for just now. Chang Wanzhou was stunned. He looked up at her and saw her sincere expression. There seemed to be stars blooming in her eyes. He turned his head away awkwardly. It's my duty. Chu Luyue didn't say anything else. It seemed that there was still a lot to teach him in the future. You. What are you doing? This is wiling. Do you dare to kill me? Yu Minhan struggled to get up from the ground, only to find that Chang Wanzhou's punch had caused him serious internal injuries. He immediately covered his chest and cursed angrily. It's not difficult to kill you, but now that he's my man, I don't want you to dirty his hands. As Chu Luyue spoke, she took a step forward. She was clearly smiling, but the corners of her eyes and eyebrows carried a frightening cold pressure. Yu Minhan unconsciously took a step back. Chu Luyue said softly, if you cooperate well, this matter will be over. Otherwise, I'd like to see how they'll react if they know that you randomly found someone to participate in the Wanzhong competition. Yu Minhan's face turned pale. Then, as if he had made up his mind, he said sternly, I don't care what you say. You want to sue my Azure Dragon gang? You're thinking too highly of yourself. Today Chang Wanzhou must stay. As soon as he finished speaking, he took out a whistle from somewhere and blew it fiercely. A moment later, several figures suddenly rushed over from behind him. They surrounded Chu Luyue and Yu Minhan. There was no need to ask to know that these were all people from the Azure Dragon gang. Chu Luyue swept her gaze over the crowd with a faint smile and teased Chang Wanzhou. I couldn't tell that they've really put in a lot of effort for you. Chang Wanzhou frowned. I'll take care of it. Chu Luyue face-bombed. Children shouldn't always fight and kill all day. Chang Wanzhou's frown deepened. I'm not a child. Chu Luyue gave him a comforting look. Seeing the two of them talking, as if there was no one else around, Yu Minhan was furious. They didn't put them in their eyes at all. The Azure Dragon gang didn't have a high status in West Hill, but Chang Wanzhou's appearance was an opportunity for them to make a meteoric rise. Previously, the higher-ups had asked him to find a cultivator with a Daijing Yuan meridian, but he was delayed by some matters. He planned to be punished when he returned, but he didn't expect to meet Chang Wanzhou. At that time, he had no choice but to persuade Chang Wanzhou to go there. He planned to make up the numbers and avoid punishment. Who knew that Chang Wanzhou's strength would far exceed their expectations? Judging from the situation in today's qualifiers, he really had a chance to get into the top few. Only then did he realize that he had found a treasure. Under such circumstances, how could he let Chang Wanzhou go? Go! He waved his hand suddenly. The people next to him immediately rushed up. However, at that moment, someone suddenly shouted from the side. What kind of place is Xuanji Square? How dare you act so presumptuously? Yu Minhan and the others glanced at them, and immediately broke out in cold sweat. The people who came were the Black Cavalry, and from the looks of it, they seemed to be captains in the army. Officer, please don't misunderstand. We're not here to cause trouble. It's just a misunderstanding. This Chu Luyue wants to steal our Azure Dragon gang's people. You must not let her go. That person walked toward Chu Luyue. Yu Minhan and the others were secretly happy. Chu Luyue would not have a good ending after provoking the Black Cavalry. However, in the next moment, they saw that the person actually cupped his fists and bowed respectfully to Chu Luyue. Miss Chu, I'm late and have startled you. The expressions on Yu Minhan and the others' faces froze. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 493. Why was this Black Cavalry soldier so respectful to Chu Luyue? Sir, Yu Minhan said uneasily. Did you make a mistake? Didn't this Chu Luyue come from outside heaven's canopy? Could it be that she had some powerful backing? Chu Luyue smiled faintly. Colonel Duan, you don't have to blame yourself. After all, I caused this matter. Duan Ziyu shook his head. I'm responsible for your safety, so I naturally have to do everything well. He had been waiting in the audience, but he didn't expect Yu Minhan and the others to cause trouble for her. They were really tired of living. Chu Luyue's gaze swept across the pale faces of Yu Minhan and the others. Actually, it's not a big deal. Fortunately, Colonel Duan came in time. I still have some things to do later, so let's go first. Duan Ziyu stepped aside. Yes, please. Yu Minhan and the others suddenly sighed. To be able to get the Black Cavalry's colonel to protect her so closely, it was enough to prove that Chu Luyue's background was extraordinary. Yu Minhan couldn't help but secretly regret. He should have checked before. Chu Luyue stepped forward. Chang Wanzhou also followed. When Chu Luyue walked past Yu Minhan, she stopped in her tracks. If you still want to take Chang Wanzhou back, I'll be waiting for you. Yu Minhan shuddered. I wouldn't dare. Miss Chu, please. Chu Luyue was used to this kind of face and left indifferently. It wasn't until the two of them walked past that Yu Minhan glanced at Chang Wanzhou unwillingly. That was a good seedling. But he was snatched by Chu Luyue just like that. Azure Dragon Gang? Duan Ziyu walked over and said coldly. Only then did Yu Minhan remember that there was a great god standing next to her that she couldn't afford to offend. I know my mistake. Perhaps the top sex could barely stand on equal footing with the Black Cavalry, but they did not dare to offend them in the slightest. He didn't want to implicate the entire Azure Dragon Gang because of his own affairs. Sir, this lowly one has eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I didn't know that Miss Chu's backer was actually you. I have offended you for a moment. Please don't take it to heart. Yu Minhan nodded and bowed to apologize, almost kneeling down. The corners of Duan Ziyu's mouth suddenly twitched. You're wrong. I'm not qualified to be her backer. What? Yu Minhan was stunned for a while. Seeing the smile on Duan Ziyu's face, her heart gradually sank. Duan Ziyu knocked his shoulder with the hilt of his sword. Next time, before you do something, find out if the person is someone you can afford to offend. After saying that, Duan Ziyu lifted his foot and left, quickly chasing after Chu Luyue. Yu Minhan and the others looked at each other in dismay. A few people came forward and asked anxiously, Fourth brother, will we be all right? Yu Minhan's face was gloomy, and she slapped that person hard. Can't you tell whether we'll be all right or not? That's the captain of the Black Cavalry. It was usually difficult for them to even meet such a person, but now they had offended the person he wanted to protect. More importantly, it was obvious that someone of a higher rank than him had ordered him to do so. The person who wanted to protect Chu Luyue had a higher status than the captain. That person was probably one of the top figures in West Hill. Then Chang Wanzhou. Are we just going to let them take him away? He has a Daijing Yuan meridian. Another person spoke insensibly, and Yu Minhan kicked him again. How could she care about that now? The entire Azure Dragon Gang was probably going to be in trouble. Now, go back immediately. Find the gang leader. Chu Luyue left Xuanji Square with Chang Wanzhou, and Duan Ziyu quickly followed. After walking for a while, there were fewer people around. Duan Ziyu finally asked, Miss Chu, are you going to take young Master Chang back? Chu Luyue looked at him thoughtfully. I do have this plan, but I don't know if the Deputy General will agree. Duan Ziyu was really curious about why Chu Luyue did this, but he knew his identity and would never ask anything he shouldn't ask. Therefore, he only said, the inspection in the mansion has always been strict, and outsiders are not allowed to get close easily. But if Miss Chu says it herself, it will naturally be different. Chu Luiyue laughed. It didn't matter whether Mu Qinghe agreed or not. At most, she could help Chang Wanzhou find an inn. By the way, Captain Duan, I want to buy some medicinal herbs. I wonder if you can take me there? Duan Ziyu was a little surprised. But when he thought of how Chu Luiyue's force fire was clearly a talented celestial physician, it was normal for her to want to buy medicinal herbs. Come with me. After walking a few streets, Duan Ziyu brought Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou to an enormous medicinal herb shop. Chu Luiyue looked up and saw 3 shining golden words on a magnificent signboard. 100 Herbs Building. Miss Chu, this is the largest medicinal herb shop in Shilling City. You can buy whatever you want here, Duan Ziyu said. Duan Ziyu said. Chu Luiyue rubbed her nose. She wasn't worried about whether there was anything she wanted here. But she might not be able to afford it at all. 100 Herbs Building was the largest medicinal herb shop in Shilling. It had a complete range of high-quality goods and expensive prices. Her 10 white crystal coins might seem like a lot to ordinary people. But here, it was barely enough. Moreover, although she had heard a lot about 100 Herbs Building, she had never been here before. The Tianling dynasty's royal family stored a large number of precious medicinal herbs. And at the same time, she personally took care of Xianli Garden. There was almost no shortage of medicinal herbs, so naturally, she wouldn't come to a place like this. Chu Luiyue originally wanted Duan Ziyu to bring her to any shop, but she didn't expect him to pick the most expensive one. But since she was already here, she couldn't just turn around and leave. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and walked in first. As soon as she stepped over the threshold, a waiter greeted her warmly. Miss, what would you like to see? Chu Luiyue glanced around. It was a special wide rectangular hall. Rows of transparent crystal cabinets were neatly arranged, and all kinds of medicinal herbs were placed inside. In the corresponding places, there were names and introductions, as well as prices. Chu Luiyue took a cursory glance, and her eyelids twitched. 100-year-old bloodlingji costs 3 white crystal coins? What's the difference between this and robbery? I'll just look around first. Chu Luiyue's expression didn't change, and she still looked calm and noble. The waiter responded respectfully. I'll come again after you've taken a look. After saying that, he tactfully retreated to the side. In the entire hall, there were about 100 people choosing medicinal herbs. There were also many waiters like this, and they were scattered everywhere, and their attitudes were extremely good. Chu Luiyue walked along a row of crystal cabinets, and after a few steps she stopped. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 494. A palm-sized coral lay quietly in the crystal cabinet. It was orange-red in color, with a faint white color at the end. It was as clear as jade. This was a top-grade Xidagarba coral. Whether it was the size, shape, or texture, they were all excellent. Even someone as picky as Chu Luiyue liked it at first glance. This thing had an excellent effect on dispelling the cold evil aura in Chang Wanzhou's body. So it was a must to buy. Chu Luiyue's gaze shifted slightly, and she glanced at the price. 10 white crystal coins. Great. A Xidagarba coral would empty her entire fortune. Not to mention the other herbs she would need. Chu Luiyue had a headache. Before her rebirth, she had almost never bought anything with her own money. After her rebirth, she could also afford the prices in country Yaochun. But not here. White crystal coins were not that easy to earn. Wu Zhao, as a stage 5 warrior, had been in Pingliang Square for so long, but he only had a few coins on him. Not to mention her. Chu Luiyue crossed her arms with one hand and touched her chin with the other, deep in thought. It seemed that she had to think of a way to earn money as soon as possible. I'll take this, Chu Luiyue said. The waiter waiting at the side immediately smiled and went forward. You have good taste. This is the most beautiful piece of Xidagarba coral in this batch. You took a fancy to it as soon as it was displayed. Chu Luiyue was completely indifferent to this kind of rhetoric, but she still nodded in agreement. This thing is indeed not bad. The manservant's expression was rather proud. Don't worry, the things in our 100 Herbs building have always been the best. Take a look, is there anything else you want? Chu Luiyue waved her hand. I'll take this first. Let me take a look. The waiter was smart and didn't say anything else. He put on his gloves and planned to take out the thing. Wait. I'll take this piece of Xidagarba coral. A delicate woman's voice came from behind. Chu Luiyue looked back. The one who spoke was a woman in a yellow robe, who looked to be about 20 years old. She was tall and had a pretty face. However, the corners of her eyes were raised high, and there was an air of arrogance between her brows, which made people feel uncomfortable looking at her. Her eyes were fixed on the Xidagarba coral, as if she did not notice Chu Luiyue and the others. Standing beside her was a young man in his mid-20s. He wore a moon-white robe and had handsome features. He looked at the yellow-robed woman with a doting gaze. The corners of Chu Luiyue's mouth twitched ever so slightly. What a coincidence, it was another familiar face. This woman was Jiang Yuqing's younger sister, Jiang Yuji. And that man was the Xiahou family's second young master, Xiahou Tingan. These two people were somewhat related to her in the past. There was no need to mention Jiang Yuji. Back then, after she set the engagement with Jiang Yuqing, she wanted to get closer to Jiang Yuji. However, there seemed to be a barrier between the two of them, and they could not get along. In addition, Jiang Yuji made a mistake because of her stubbornness, and was reprimanded by her once. Hence, she was even more unhappy with her, and went against her multiple times. Hence, she did not pay much attention to Jiang Yuji. On the other hand, Shang Guanwan had always been on very good terms with Jiang Yuji. The two of them were close friends and were very close. As for Xiahou Tingan, he was the study companion of the princes and princesses in the palace since he was young, so he was quite familiar with them. The most important thing was that he was interested in her, and even wanted to marry her. Chu Luiyue rejected him from the start, and did not take this matter to heart after that. However, at this moment, seeing the two of them together, she still felt a little strange. Fourth Missy Jiang, I'm really sorry, but this lady already wants this piece of Xidagarba coral. The page boy clearly recognized the rich and powerful in Xiling City, as he immediately said apologetically and carefully. Jiang Yuji knitted her brows and then looked at Chu Luiyue. Seeing that gorgeous face, she was shocked for a moment. When did Xiling have such a person? People of the same sex repelled each other. Jiang Yuji had never liked people who were more glamorous than her, so she felt a little disgusted. She sized up Chu Luiyue from head to toe. This lady in red did not have any extra accessories on her, and her clothes were not made of any luxurious material. She looked very plain. She must be from a lowly background. On second thought, she guessed that she should be someone from outside heaven's canopy. The disdain in her eyes could not be hidden. Has she paid? The page boy paused. Not yet, but if she hasn't paid, then it's not considered her item. I'll buy it. There's no problem, right? As she spoke, she raised her hand. A servant behind him took a step forward and placed 10 white crystal coins on the crystal cabinet. Jiang Yuji smiled delightedly at Xiahou Tingan. Tingan, earrings made from that piece of Xidagarba coral will definitely be very beautiful. Don't you think so? She used 10 white crystals to buy a piece of high-quality Xidagarba coral just to make earrings. There weren't many families in Xiling who could be so extravagant. Xiahou Tingan pinched her nose dotingly. Yes, yes, yes. Everything will look good on you. Jiang Yuji's smile deepened, and she looked like a little woman who was immersed in love. She did not care about anyone else at all. The page boy looked at Chu Luiyue with a troubled expression. Everyone knew that whoever asked for it would get it first. But in front of such a rich and powerful person, their words were the rules. If Jiang Yuji wanted it, he did not dare to not give it to her. Miss, I'm really sorry. Fourth Missy Jiang is our shop's VIP, so I'm afraid we can't give you this piece of Xidagarba coral. But don't worry. As compensation, we'll find a piece that you're satisfied with, and give you a 20% discount. What do you think? Chu Luiyue laughed. 2 white crystals, and you want me to compromise? When did I become so easy to talk to? If it were someone else who said it nicely, I might be merciful and give it up. Anyway, I'm just buying this to make medicine. It's fine as long as the effects are the same. But the other party is Jiang Yuji. I can't back down no matter what. I don't think so. Chu Luiyue said directly. I told you to wrap it up just now, so this deal is settled. This Xidagarba coral is also mine. If other people come again, they'll be queued behind and have no right to snatch it from me, right? The page boy almost couldn't keep the smile on his face. Is this woman going to go against Jiang Yuji in public? That's the Jiang family's fourth Missy, the current prince consort's biological sister. Who doesn't know that Jiang Yuqing has a lot of power now? Everyone can't wait to curry favor with the Jiang family. Who would offend them like this? As expected, Jiang Yuji was shocked when she heard this. What did you say? Chu Luiyue knocked on the crystal cabinet, and her black jade-like eyes were calm. I said, I don't agree to give this to you. Jiang Yuji had been spoiled by others for a long time, and her temper had risen. She couldn't bear to hear the word no. Now that she saw that such a small character actually dared to go against her, she was furious. Say that again. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 495. Chu Luiyue smiled lightly. The Jiang family is an aristocratic family, and fourth Missy Jiang has a distinguished status. I'm sure you know the principle of first come, first served. You shouldn't be able to snatch other people's things, right? This smiley sentence made Jiang Yuji choke. This girl is so sharp-tongued. Just as she was about to go up and teach the other party a lesson, Xiahou Tingan gently said, Yuji, this Missy is right. Jiang Yuji looked at him angrily. Are you going to speak up for her too? Don't tell me I've taken a fancy to this girl's looks. Xiahou Tingan saw her expression and knew that she misunderstood. He smiled and patted her hand. What are you thinking about? As the Jiang family's fourth Missy, you really shouldn't do this. If not, the Grand Tutor will scold you again when he finds out. Hearing him mention her father, Jiang Yuji then restrained herself. As the Grand Tutor, Jiang Lizhua had strict requirements for himself and the Jiang family, so Jiang Yuji was very afraid of him. But I just want that piece of Jizo coral. Jiang Yuji stomped her feet indignantly. Don't worry. I'll find everything you want for you. Xiahou Ting comforted her for a while before stepping forward with a generous smile on his face. We don't want to snatch things that others like. However, it's rare for Yuji to meet something she likes. So, I'll pay twice the price to buy this thing. The highest bidder wins. Is there a problem? As he spoke, the servant behind him went forward again and took out another 10 white crystals. The page boy looked at Chu Luiyue hesitantly. This Missy you see. Chu Luiyue raised her brows. It's true that money makes the world go round. The other party is paying twice the price, so it's not wrong. If I use the same excuse from before, I'll be at a disadvantage. Just as she was hesitating, Duanziyu suddenly said, Mississippi Master said that he'll try his best to satisfy all your requests during this period. If you really want this piece of Xidagarba coral, just let me know. Chu Luiyue looked at him in surprise. He really said that? Duanziyu nodded. The day before, when Master returned, he specifically instructed this subordinate about this matter. Of course, that was not what Mu Qinghe had said. What he said was that since Chu Luiyue was brought here by him, everything he did in West Hill was related to his reputation. He asked Duanziyu to take good care of him. If they lost because of 10 white crystals, and this matter spread out in the future, those who did not know would think that Mu clan was poor and stingy. Chu Luiyue could probably guess what Mu Qinghe meant. Although he didn't care much about extravagance, as the deputy general of the Black Cavalry of the Tianling dynasty, he would never back down when he needed to be strong. Chu Luiyue's lips slowly curved up. This feeling doesn't seem bad? Thank you, Lieutenant Duan. Duanziyu said respectfully. Miss Chu, you're welcome. After saying that, he walked forward and threw out a money bag. There are 40 white crystals in here. We want this item. Everyone was dumbfounded. Are you kidding me? Using 40 white crystals to buy a piece of Xidagarba coral? Even if it's of better quality, it might not be worth this price. Is this person crazy? Duanziyu looked at the page boy. The highest bidder gets it, right? The page boy hurriedly said. I'll help you now. Jiang Yuji anxiously pulled Xiahou Tingan's sleeves. Xiahou Tingan nodded at her and raised his voice. I'll pay 50 white crystals. No matter what, I'm the second young master of the Xiahou family. When have I ever lost because of money? Especially since Jiang Yuji is here. I can't let others step on me. Duan Ziyu didn't even turn his head. 100 white crystals. He actually doubled it. The entire exhibition hall was silent for a moment, and everyone looked over. In the entire exhibition hall on the first floor, there isn't anything worth more than 100 white crystals. Someone actually paid 100 white crystals for a piece of Xidagarba coral. There's nothing wrong with his brain. He's just rich. Mu Qinghe is really rich. Chu Luiyue touched his chin. Most people thought that Mu Qinghe was just a general who started from scratch and relied on his own capabilities to become a new noble in Xiling. Even though his status was high, his family's wealth couldn't be compared to the aristocratic families in Xiling City. But in actual fact, the best way to earn money was through war. Dahuang Swamp had been rebellious for decades, and Mu Qinghe led his troops to suppress them with his iron fist. His wealth was simply uncountable. Jiang Yuji and Xiahou Tingan were of noble birth, but their families were huge. In terms of money, they weren't as free as Mu Qinghe. As expected, Xiahou Tingan's expression changed. It wasn't that he couldn't take out 100 white crystals. But to him, this wasn't a small sum. If his family knew that he used so much money to buy a piece of Xidagarba coral, he would definitely be harshly reprimanded. His throat was dry as he looked at Jiang Yuji awkwardly. Yuji, even though this item is good, it's not worth so much money. Why don't we look at something else? I'll buy it for you. How about that? Jiang Yuji's face immediately pulled long. Tingan, are you unwilling to spend money for me? If you're not willing, I'll buy it myself. As she spoke, she acted like she was going to fork out money. Seeing that she was angry, Xiahou Tingan immediately tried to curry favor with her. Aya, I was just joking with you. Why did you take it seriously? Of course, I'll buy it for you if you like it. Jiang Yuji was doubtful. Really? Xiahou Tingan could only nod. Of course. He looked at the page boy and clenched his teeth. I'll add another 5 white crystals. Pfft, someone suddenly laughed out loud. Even though this voice disappeared very quickly, everyone could hear the mockery in it. Compared to Duan Ziyu's generosity when he said that he would double the price, these 5 white crystals were really stingy. Xiahou Tingan's face instantly flushed red. He also felt embarrassed. But this was really my limit. Duan Ziyu's expression didn't change. 150. Xiahou Tingan's face turned pale again. Countless gazes landed on him, and he felt as if there was a dagger on his back. He turned around and glanced at Jiang Yuji, but he saw her expectant expression as she anxiously said, Tingan, quickly increase the price. This item is going to be snatched away by them. Easy for you to say. Anger surged up in Xiahou Tingan's heart. How can I not know what Jiang Yuji is thinking? She has always been arrogant and never wants to lose. But she's worried that the Grand Tutor will reprimand her for spending money recklessly. That's why she's rushing me to pay the bill. I've been thinking of ways to curry favor with her in the past year. And the two families are already discussing the marriage agreement. If I make her unhappy at this time, won't all my hard work in the past year go to waste? He opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, Duan Ziyu said, no matter how much second young master Xiahou offers, we'll add another 50 white crystals. We must have this Xidagarba coral. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 496. The crowd sucked in a cold breath. Just how much confidence did he have the guts to say such words? Is it worth it for a piece of Xidagarba coral? The answer is definitely yes. This is because the two parties aren't just fighting for a piece of Xidagarba coral. It's more about their face. Things have already gotten out of hand. Whoever backs off now will be admitting defeat, right? Jiang Yuji and Xiahou Tingan represent their respective family clans. No matter if it's the Jiang family or the Xiahou family, they are all top families with high statuses. If they lose to this unknown person at 100 Herbs Building today, won't it be too embarrassing? Xiahou Tingan finally couldn't maintain his expression as he coldly said to Duan Ziyu, are you purposely going against the Xiahou family? Chu Luiyue chuckled and said, Second young master Xiahou, second young master Xiahou. Second young master Xiahou, Where did this come from? Previously, I saw this Xitagarba coral first, and you guys increased the price. Why is it that we're purposely going against you now that we're increasing the price? Xiahou Tingan couldn't rebut, and was embarrassed. Even if I can continue to increase the price, I'll definitely be held responsible later. Besides, the other party clearly wants to fight to the end. If I let this continue, it will only get worse. Tingan, why aren't you saying anything? Jiang Yuji knitted her exquisite brows. You have to buy it for me. Are you going to watch me get bullied by them? Xiahou Tingan became increasingly frustrated. Who's the one being bullied now? I just stood at the side and casually said a few words. I don't have to do anything. But I'm the one who's embarrassing myself. Even if I really buy it, I'll be called willful at most when I go back. What about me? I'm not the only young master in the Xiahou family. Someone might use this incident to make an issue out of it. Tingan, Tingan? Jiang Yuji called out impatiently. Xiahou Tingan took a deep breath in and suppressed the anger in his heart. He tidied his clothes, coughed, and looked at Duan Ziyu. You're from the Black Cavalry? It seems like you're a lieutenant. From what I know, the salary of a Black Cavalry lieutenant isn't high enough for you to spend money like this, right? Could it be that your money came from an improper source? There were dirty people everywhere, and the Black Cavalry was no exception. This lieutenant was so arrogant, and his tone was even more arrogant than him, a proper young master of an aristocratic family. It would be strange if there wasn't a ghost. Duan Ziyu's back and shoulders were straight as a javelin. I am the captain of the 3rd Black Cavalry Corps, Duan Ziyu. I have been in the army for 11 years, and have killed 1,589 enemies. I can guarantee with my life that I have never done anything against my conscience, nor have I taken any money against my conscience. His voice was cold and hard, and every word was like a clap of thunder crashing onto the ground. What second young master Xiahou said earlier is not only an insult to me, but it's also an insult to the thousands of Black Cavalry soldiers who protect Dynasty. Please take back those words. Everyone trembled, and then they were filled with deep veneration. With such a military record, it was more than enough for him to be promoted by 1 rank. The generals and soldiers who guarded the territory of the Tianling dynasty had sacrificed their lives and fought on the battlefield without any regard for their lives. In the end, they were humiliated by a playboy. How despicable. Xiahou Tingan was also shocked by Duan Ziyu's aura. After all, he was pampered and raised in Xiling City, so he naturally wasn't on the same level as Duan Ziyu, who was constantly on the brink of death. Now that Duan Ziyu spoke harshly, he instantly felt guilty. Even though the surrounding people didn't say anything, their gazes were filled with reproach. I was just casually asking. If your money came from a legitimate source, why wouldn't you dare to say it? Xiahou Tingan braced himself and retorted. Duan Ziyu sneered. Second young master Xiahou, do I have to report to you how the Mu residence's money came about? Mu residence? Which Mu residence? Xiahou Tingan was dazed for a moment before he recovered his senses. There's only one Mu residence in Xiling City. Black Cavalry Lieutenant General Mu Qinghe's official residence. Why you're Mu Qing, Vice Admiral Mu's man? Xiahou Tingan's voice trembled. The exhibition hall became exceptionally quiet. Duan Ziyu said word by word. If second young master Xiahou doesn't believe me, you can follow me there. Xiahou Tingan immediately said, there's no need. Mu Qinghe's residence is indeed filled with the Black Cavalry. I was just wondering why this face looked so familiar. Mu Qinghe did bring him to show his face previously, but Duan Ziyu was just a subordinate after all, so Xiahou Tingan didn't notice him at all. That's why I didn't recognize him after so long. He looked at Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou at the side and asked uneasily, Miss Mu Qinghe? Then you. Miss Chu is the Mu residence's VIP. Duan Ziyu spoke first. Xiahou Tingan choked and couldn't say anything for a long time. I offended Mu Qinghe. Jiang Yuji was also shocked when she heard about the Mu residence and felt anxious. Mu Qinghe isn't someone to be trifled with. This girl is actually related to Mu Qinghe? If I knew, I wouldn't have snatched her from them. Second young master Xiahou, may I know if you still want to continue increasing the price? Asked Duan Ziyu. Xiahou Tingan felt suffocated. Not to mention that I don't have any money now. Even if I did, I can't go against Mu Qinghe. Isn't this finding trouble for no reason? And no need. Since Ms. Chu is the Mu Residence's VIP, we'll let you have this Xidagarba coral as a token of appreciation for Vice Admiral Mu. Second young Master Xiahou. You don't have to be so polite. Chu Luiyue suddenly spoke and smiled at Xiahou Tingan and Jiang Yuji. Since you want it, we'll compete fairly. I'm just a girl from an ordinary background. Vice Admiral Mu is so generous, but I don't deserve it. I'm already very embarrassed that I've troubled Vice Admiral Mu with food, clothing, and transportation. And it's even more inappropriate for me to use his power to intimidate you and ask the two of you to let me have it. So, you really don't have to let me have it. Her words made Xiahou Tingan so embarrassed that he wanted to find a hole in the ground to hide in. I'm just finding a way out for myself. But why is this girl clinging onto it and not letting go? He kept quiet for a while before clenching his teeth. No need. At the end of the day, this Xidagarba coral is just a small toy. If Ms. Chu wants it, feel free to take it. How can we snatch what you love? Jiang Yuji hurriedly said. Tingan. We still have something on, so we'll leave first. Xiahou Tingan spoke very quickly and turned around to leave after he finished speaking. Jiang Yuji was filled with anger as she watched Xiahou Tingan leave quickly. Never mind that he didn't buy anything for me. But he actually left me behind, and left me behind. She turned around and glanced at Chu Luiyue. It's all your fault. Chu Luiyue wasn't angry at all. Instead, he smiled and said sincerely, 4th Mississippi 4th Young Mistress Jiang, you should thank me. Jiang Yuji was dazed. Thank you for what? Chu Luiyue clicked his tongue and said regretfully, TSK. Even though my background isn't as good as the two of you, I know one thing. A man who isn't willing to spend money on a woman is unreliable. Second young Master Xiahou's family background is top-notch. So why isn't he willing to spend such a small amount of money on you? Originally, I even said that if he raised the price again, I'd go along with the flow and let you have the item. What a pity. Jiang Yuji was embarrassed and furious. Her expression changed, and she hurriedly turned around to leave. Chu Luiyue retracted his gaze and lightly knocked on the crystal cabinet. This cabinet, that cabinet, and the one by the wall. I want everything inside. There was dead silence in the exhibition hall. Chang Wanzhou couldn't help but ask. Didn't you say that you don't deserve that person's money? Chu Luiyue chuckled and patted his chest. Anyway, I'm already filled with guilt. Let this guilt come more fiercely. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Web. Chapter 497. The corner of Duan Ziyu's mouth twitched. For some reason he felt a strong sense of uneasiness. Sure enough, Chu Luiyue then looked at the servant. By the way, is there a total of 3 floors in your exhibition hall? The servant hurriedly said with great respect. Yes. The herbs on the 2nd floor are more expensive. The 3rd floor is for VIPs. If you want to go up and take a look, we will immediately send someone to introduce them to you. Chu Luiyue wanted expensive herbs. There's no need to find someone else. You can accompany me up. The servant was surprised and delighted. One must know that in 100 Herbs building, there were people on every floor who specially served. Without permission, the servants on the lower floor could not casually enter the upper floor. Looking at Chu Luiyue's attitude, it was clear that she wanted to buy a lot. Just the ones she had just ordered were already more than what he usually sold in a month. If he served Chu Luiyue to her satisfaction, he would be promoted in a matter of minutes. Miss Chu, different floors have separate packaging and checkouts. The servant quickly took out a card and handed it over with both hands. You have spent 1,000 white crystal coins just now. We will give you the 100 Herbs Building's gold card for free. At the same time, you can enjoy a 10% discount. Chu Luiyue took the card. Her eyes lit up for a moment, but then she looked at Duan Ziyu with some hesitation. Commandant Duan, is it okay for me to do this? Even if Duan Ziyu really felt that it was inappropriate for her to do this, he would not say so. He coughed and said, Don't worry, Miss Chu. Mu Clan can still afford this money. The items on the 2nd floor were more expensive, but it should be fine for Chu Luiyue to casually choose a few items. Chu Luiyue was relieved and smiled. That's good. When I go back, I will personally thank Vice Admiral Mu. After saying that, she let the servant lead her to the second floor. There were clearly fewer people on the second floor compared to the first floor. Chu Luiyue roughly scanned the area and realized that there were only 3 customers, including herself, who were actually looking at the items here. She even recognized one of them. It was the pavilion master of Chongshi Pavilion, Yuchi Song. He was also a celestial physician and had given her a lot of pointers. He could be considered half a teacher to her. He didn't expect to bump into her here. However, compared to before, Yuchi Song's hair was a lot whiter, and he looked like he had aged a few years. Miss Chu, this way please. The manservant walking in front stepped aside and welcomed Chu Luiyue inside. Chu Luiyue quickly withdrew his gaze and followed the servant forward. This place also used crystal cabinets for display, but each of the crystal cabinets was stacked with a corresponding defensive profound formation. Just these specifications alone were much more expensive than the ones below. Chu Luiyue looked at the medicinal herbs placed inside. They were indeed rare and precious items. However, unlike the first floor, the labels here only had the names of the medicinal herbs, but not their uses and prices. This was obviously for those knowledgeable and rich people. Chu Luiyue walked a few steps and pointed at a green fruit the size of a fist. Take this out for me to see. Duan Ziyu glanced at it from the side. Green spiritual snake fruit. It didn't look like anything special. However, the manservant's expression changed. He looked like he was shocked, but also like he was happy and excited. He hurriedly put on gloves and took it out carefully. Although he said he took it out, there was actually a layer of crystal barrier around the green spiritual snake fruit. The protection was very tight. Chu Luiyue looked at it carefully. This should be 500 years old. You have a good eye. This green spiritual snake fruit was found on a 1,000-year-old green spiritual snake tree in our 100 Herbs building. There were only 3 fruits on the tree. Therefore, it is very precious. The manservant's impression of Chu Luiyue changed greatly. This Miss Chu could actually recognize the age of this green spiritual snake fruit. She didn't seem to be from an ordinary family. Ordinary people didn't have such eyesight. Chu Luiyue nodded with satisfaction. Then this is it. The manservant suppressed the ecstasy in his heart and said, this green spiritual snake fruit costs 5,000 white crystal coins. Are you sure you want it? Duan Ziyu suddenly raised his head. Such a green fruit actually costs 5,000 white crystal coins. Chu Luiyue seemed to have noticed his abnormality. She looked back and asked with concern. Colonel Duan, what's wrong? Duan Ziyu forced a smile. No, nothing. Chu Luiyue seemed to have suddenly understood something and asked in a low voice. Ah, is it because I picked something too expensive? Duan Ziyu. Was there a need to ask such an obvious question? Although Master said to take good care of Miss Chu. But according to this, Master would definitely bleed a lot. But how could he go back on his words? Duan Ziyu forced a smile. No, don't think too much. It's just that I'm a rough person and didn't recognize these medicinal herbs. I didn't expect them to be so expensive and was a little surprised. Chu Luiyue breathed a sigh of relief. That's good. I was still worried that I had done something wrong. Duan Ziyu was at a loss for words. Although he looked calm on the surface, he was already thinking of all kinds of reasons to tell Master about this matter. Chu Luiyue continued to walk forward. This exhibition hall was very big, and there were many medicinal herbs. Chu Luiyue also took a fancy to many things. She walked all the way and only walked a third of the way, but she had already picked a few items. The manservant followed behind and secretly thought that this person really had good eyesight. She actually picked the most expensive ones here. Miss Chu, according to the items you chose just now, it has already exceeded 10,000 white crystal coins. Your gold card has automatically been upgraded to platinum card. Except for those on the 3rd floor, you can enjoy a 15% discount on the other items in 100 Herbs building. Chu Luiyue listened and suddenly stood in front of an 8-colored ice crystal. Add this too. The manservant had gradually gotten used to Chu Luiyue's generosity and directly said with a smile, this 8-colored ice crystal is taken from the deep sea and contains the power of extreme cold. The price is 7,000 white crystal coins. Duanziyu's footsteps were a little shaky. Chang Wanzhou stood beside Chu Luyue, frowned slightly and asked in a low voice. The cold evil qi in my body. I don't think I need this thing, right? Who said it's for you? Chu Luyue glanced at him. I just thought it looked good and bought it to look at it. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 498. Since Mu Qinghe had already spoken, she naturally couldn't let him down. She had helped Mu Qinghe so much in her previous life, so it was only right for her to repay him a little in this life. After hearing this, Chang Wanzhou nodded in understanding. He didn't have much concept of money, and he rarely dealt with others. What Duanziyu said just now should mean that Chu Luyue could buy as much as she wanted. Then there was no problem for her to buy these. Oh, by the way, go over there and take a look. If there's anything you like, just buy it. Chu Luyue said to Chang Wanzhou with a smile. Chang Wanzhou wasn't interested in these things, but since he was already Chu Luyue's follower, he naturally had to listen to her orders. He responded and swept his gaze across the crystal cabinet. However, he still didn't move more than 3 steps away from Chu Luyue. Chu Luyue raised her chin. You can also go over there and take a look yourself. Chang Wanzhou shook his head. Chu Luyue thought to herself that this child was really stubborn, but the corners of her mouth curled up. Then I'll help you pick it. Chang Wanzhou nodded silently again. When he was obedient like this, he always seemed especially soft and obedient. Chu Luyue resisted the urge to rub his hair, and continued walking forward. Duanziyu dragged his stiff body and followed behind. You really can't give me more? This is the best quality scarlet flame heart jade. Back then, this old man spent a lot of effort to dig it out. Yuchi-song's voice suddenly rang out. Chu Luyue looked up and saw Yuchi-song talking to a servant. He was holding a small black jade box in his hand, and his expression was somewhat urgent and embarrassed. It turned out that he wasn't here to buy medicinal herbs, but to sell them. The servant looked troubled. Pavilion Master Yuchi, I'm really sorry, but this is the highest price we can offer. A hint of disappointment flashed across Yuchi-song's face. He hesitated for a moment before he finally let out a long sigh and pushed the jade box forward. Forget it, let's leave it at that. The lid of the jade box was open, and Chu Luyue happened to see what was inside. It was an extremely exquisite jade seal that gradually turned from transparent to red from the outside to the inside. The outside was clear and moist, while the center was warm and dense, without a trace of impurities. Chu Luyue widened his eyes slightly. That seal was Yuchi-song's favorite in the past. In the past, if she wanted to play with it, she would have to persuade him in every possible way. It was clear how much he treasured this seal, but now, he actually wanted to sell the seal. The servant carefully closed the jade box. Yuchi-song's eyes were full of reluctance. He opened his mouth, but didn't say anything. The servant handed over a card. Here are 10,000 white crystal coins. Please keep them well. Yuchi-song took the card and unconsciously rubbed it a few times. Finally, he ruthlessly withdrew his gaze and turned to leave. Chu Luyue saw clearly that his face was full of loneliness. When Yuchi-song brushed past her, Chu Luyue could even feel the deep loneliness on his body. She was just about to speak when she remembered her identity and swallowed the words in her throat. After Yuchi-song left, she asked in a seemingly unintentional manner, So 100 Herbs Building also accepts medicinal herbs? The servant next to her smiled and said, Of course. And the price is the most fair in West Hill. That seal carved from scarlet heart jade could be sold for 10,000 white crystal coins. There was indeed nothing to say, but what Chu Luyue was curious about was why Yuchi-song did this. Looking at his appearance, it was obvious that he was extremely reluctant. Chongshu Pavilion's status in West Hill was not low. Yuchi-song, as the pavilion master and a celestial physician, had never been short of money. How could he have fallen to such a state? She smiled, revealing a hint of curiosity. That old man just now. To be able to take out such a valuable thing, his identity should not be ordinary, right? The servant did not suspect her, and only thought that Chu Luyue asked casually. He whispered, That is Pavilion Master Weiqi of Chongshu Pavilion. Chu Liyue blinked. Since he is the Pavilion Master, why would he come in person? She did not finish her sentence, but the meaning was obvious. The servant sighed. Sigh, you don't know. Chongshu Pavilion used to be a top sect in West Hill City, but now. He shook his head with a look of pity. Chu Liyue asked, what's wrong now? The servant looked at her and lowered his voice. We've all heard about Chongshu Pavilion, but we don't know much. We only know that Chongshu Pavilion was robbed a year ago, and there were heavy casualties. Even Pavilion Lord Weiqi had been injured, and still hadn't recovered from his injuries. In addition, Pavilion Master Weiqi's only son died in an accident half a year ago, which was an even greater blow to Pavilion Master Weiqi. So, Chu Liyue's heart trembled. What kind of person could have dealt such a blow to Chongshu Pavilion? Moreover, brother Yuqi Lang was also dead? No wonder Yuqi Song looked so haggard. As of today, Chongsu Cabinet has already become a second-rate clan. Pavilion Master Weiqi is struggling to hold on, and it's actually not easy. Chongshu Pavilion had always had a good reputation in West Hill. Most of its disciples were celestial physician, and they had always had a good relationship with 100 Herbs Building. Seeing them wither to this extent, the people of 100 Herbs Building were also filled with emotions. Chu Liyue's brows furrowed slightly. Chongshu Pavilion had a strong foundation. Even if it suffered such a disaster, it was unlikely that its status would fall so quickly in just a year. There must be another reason. It was very likely that someone was deliberately suppressing it. After all, she and Yuqi Song were very close back then. It was not impossible that Jiang Yuqing and Sheng Guanwan were deliberately taking revenge. If it was really because of her that the Chongshu Pavilion was implicated, Chu Liyue's mood was complicated, and she did not speak for a while. Miss Chu, are you all right? Seeing this, the servant called out to her twice. Chu Liyue came back to her senses. Her expression had already returned to normal, and she smiled slightly. Oh, it's nothing. I was just thinking that the seal looked good. The corner of Duan Ziyu's eyes twitched violently. Sure enough, Chu Liyue then walked towards the servant who had just received the seal, and stood in front of the crystal cabinet. She did not have time to put away the black jade box. Chu Liyue said, let me see this thing. The two servants were overjoyed. They hurriedly presented it to him respectfully. Chu Liyue looked at it for a while. I want this. Since Miss Chu is so straightforward, then I'll sell this treasure to you at the original price. Those who could be servants here were all shrewd people. This Miss Chu was an important guest of the Mu clan, and she was generous. It was better to rope her in than anything else. Everyone knew that the Mu clan was full of men. Now that a woman suddenly appeared, and a beautiful young woman at that, perhaps the ruthless Vice Admiral Mu had some thoughts. Based on this trend, she might even become the mistress of the Mu clan. Chu Liyue naturally did not know what these people were thinking. It was naturally good to be able to buy it at the original price. She picked up the seal and rubbed it for a moment. Something seemed to be surging in her heart. Did the Pavilion Master sell anything here before? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 499. Duan Ziyu finally couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Miss Chu, don't tell me you're planning to buy all of Pavilion Master Yuqi's things. Duan Ziyu's words reminded Chu Liyue. She suddenly came back to her senses and smiled in surprise. How could it be? I just thought that since he has such an identity, he must have a lot of treasures. I want to see them, but it seems that it's getting late. I'll come back another day. Duan Ziyu secretly breathed a sigh of relief. If she continued to buy, he really didn't know how to explain it to his master. The two servants were slightly disappointed, but her spending today was already very high, and they were already satisfied. Moreover, she was backed by Mu clan, and had a lot of money. How could she not come back in the future? Yes, Miss Chu, we'll immediately pack up the things you liked. Do you want us to send someone to carry them for you? Or do you want to pack them up and send them to Mu clan together? It was too high profile to take so many things back from 100 Herbs Building at once. It was clearly looking for trouble for her. Chu Liyue waved her hand. You can send them to Mu clan later. Yes. You spent 103,000 white crystal coins on the second floor, plus the 4,800 white crystal coins on the first floor before. It's a total of 107,800 white crystal coins. After a 15% discount, it'll be 91,600. At the same time, your platinum card will be upgraded to a black gold card. You see, the servant said and looked at Duanziyu. It was obvious that he wanted to pay. Although it wasn't his money, Duanziyu's heart still ached fiercely. 90,000 white crystal coins. Even for the master, this was not a small amount. Since it's upgraded to a black gold card, are there any other benefits? Duanziyu asked, unwilling to give up. The servant's face was full of earnest and sincere smiles. Although the discount of the black gold card and the platinum card are the same, in fact, they are very different. The distinguished guests with the black gold card are qualified to go up to the third floor. If your spending reaches 1 million, a special box will be prepared for you on the third floor for your use alone. 100,000 white crystal coins could only get a chance to go up to the third floor, and 1 million white crystal coins could only win a box. Wasn't this threshold too high? Duanziyu took a deep breath and took out a universe ring. There are 10,000 white crystal coins in here. Take it as a deposit. As for the rest, once you send the items to Mu Clan, we'll settle the rest separately. The manservant respectfully received it with both hands, and the smile on his face became even more enthusiastic. He was not worried that Mu Clan would go back on their word. Even after working in the 100 Herbs building for so many years, the total performance was not as good as today's. With this stroke, he would be completely rich. Miss Chu, if you need anything in the future, 100 Herbs building will do our best to help you. Chu Luyue glanced at Duanziyu and smiled. I still have something to do today, so I'll take my leave first. When he left, all the servants on the first and second floor obviously knew that Chu Luyue had become their distinguished guest. They all bowed to him. The manservant accompanied them all the way and respectfully sent them off. Only when the three figures completely disappeared did he return with a face full of smiles. After ruthlessly ripping off Mu Qinghe, Chu Luyue's mood became much better. Just as he returned to Mu Clan's entrance with Chang Wanzhou, he saw Mu Qinghe not far away walking toward him. It was already evening, and the sky had just turned dark. But relatively speaking, this was the first time Mu Qinghe came back so early in the past few days. After not seeing her for a while, Mu Qinghe became thinner again, and her complexion did not look too good. But Chu Luyue did not show any change in expression. He still smiled and bowed to her. Greetings, Vice Admiral Mu. Mu Qinghe stared at Chu Luyue. I heard that you defeated a beginner 5th stage martial artist in today's qualifier? Chu Luyue was not surprised that he knew about this. He nodded with a smile. Yes. It was just luck. Luck can come once but not twice, Mu Qinghe said calmly. It seemed that he had already heard about the battle with Wu Zhao in Pingliang Square. Chu Luyue thought that this person looked busy, but he did not miss out on anything that he should know. Looks like you have improved a lot during this time. Chu Luyue's eyes curved. Thank you, Vice Admiral Mu, for the praise. Lu Yu is ashamed to accept it. Duanziyu suddenly shuddered. Now, whenever he heard Chu Luyue say the words, ashamed to accept it, he felt a headache coming on. Mu Qinghe looked at him and snorted. That proud and satisfied expression clearly showed that he felt that it was natural for him to win. Or did he look ashamed at all? The Wanzhong competition will officially begin tomorrow. You just have to prepare yourself. With that, Mu Qinghe turned to leave. Vice Admiral Mu, wait. Chu Luyue hurriedly stopped him. I have a friend who is also participating in this Wanzhong competition, but he doesn't have a place to stay. I wonder if you can let him stay in the residence for a while? Mu Qinghe had noticed Chang Wanzhou behind her just now, but she did not expect Chu Luyue to make such a request. He scrutinized Chang Wanzhou for a while. Since he is participating in the Wanzhong competition, there must be someone to guide him. How can he not have a place to stay? Chu Luyue quickly and briefly explained the situation to him, but she made some changes to it. For example, the person Chang Wanzhou was looking for claimed to be you. Chu Luyue naturally could not tell Mu Qinghe this. She only said that Chang Wanzhou came to Xiling alone to look for his family. Because he was alone and had no one to rely on, she pitied him and took the initiative to help. Mu Qinghe directly rejected her. Other than the Black Cavalry, the Mu residence does not allow anyone to enter, let alone stay. Chu Luiyue clasped her hands together. Vice Admiral Mu, you just need to tidy up a room in my courtyard for him. I guarantee that he will not cause any trouble. When the Wanzhong competition is over, I will naturally send him away. Of course, she would not be staying here by then. Mu Qinghe looked at her pair of thirsty and cunning eyes, and changed the topic. If anything happens, you will be fully responsible. This meant that she agreed. Chu Luiyue immediately smiled until her eyes curved. Thank you, Vice Admiral Mu. Mu Qinghe glanced at Chang Wanzhou again, and walked into the residence first. That young man seemed to be quite talented. Chu Luiyue then brought Chang Wanzhou to her courtyard. Duanziyu quickly excused himself. Needless to say, he must have gone to find Mu Qinghe to tell her that she bought herbs at 100 Herbs Building today. Chu Luiyue did not care at all. If 100,000 white crystal coins could sway Mu Qinghe, then he would not have the magnanimity to survive until today. She knew that he would definitely do that, so she did not hesitate to spend money today. She called Chang Wanzhou to her room. Sit down and take his pulse. Chang Wanzhou sat obediently at the side and stretched out his hand. His wrist was very white and translucent, and the faint green blood vessels were clearly visible. But his hands were very rough, and there was a thick layer of calluses on his palms. And if one looked carefully, there were many old scars, and there was not a single piece of good skin. How did you get these injuries? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 500. Chang Wanzhou followed her gaze and glanced at his hand. I don't really remember. His tone was indifferent and normal, as if he was talking about something very normal. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. God knew how much suffering he had to go through to survive in Nanjiang's environment. However, he seemed to be used to it. Chu Luiyue placed her finger gently on his wrist and injected a trace of force. As soon as she did, she felt a strong cold aura rushing toward her. Her eyes turned cold, and she immediately increased her strength. However, the cold aura was strange and strong. Chu Luiyue's force almost couldn't move an inch in it. After a while, she summoned a transparent flame from the heavenly square cauldron and infused it with her force. The effect was immediate. The cold aura retreated quickly, as if it had encountered something terrifying. Even the flesh and yuan meridians frozen by the cold aura seemed to show signs of loosening wherever the transparent karmic fire passed through. Chu Luiyue was delighted. She didn't expect the flame in the heavenly square cauldron to deal with it so easily. Chang Wanzhou frowned in discomfort. Chu Luiyue retracted her force and looked at him carefully. You're not feeling well? Chang Wanzhou nodded. It's like I'm burning up. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. She had wrapped the transparent flame with force just now. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be too hot. Why did Chang Wanzhou have such a big reaction? There's too much cold aura in your body. If you don't deal with it soon, you might freeze into an ice cube. Didn't you ask me for a fire seed because of this? Chang Wanzhou retracted his hand. His soft golden hair hung down and covered his eyes. I've just become a third-grade celestial physician. I can't help you condense a fire seed for now. However, I can at least help you recuperate. By the way, where did the cold aura in your body come from? How long has it been? It looks like at least 10 years. Chang Wanzhou pursed his lips. It's been like this for as long as I can remember. Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. What did you say? The Jiang mansion. Jiang Yuqing returned to the mansion through the back door. He quietly returned to his courtyard and went to the study. When the servants who were guarding the study saw him return, they all bowed respectfully. Jiang Yuqing asked as he pushed the door open. Father didn't come today, right? Young master, the grand tutor is not here today. Madam, on the other hand, came by and left when she heard that you were resting. Jiang Yuqing nodded and walked to the chair behind his desk and sat down. Just continue to watch. This young master wants to be alone. Yes. The servant carefully closed the door. Jiang Yuqing took off the human skin mask on his face leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and rubbed his eyebrows. However, that young girl's smiling face appeared in his mind again. Jiang Yuqing was frustrated and suddenly stood up. The chair made a hurried and piercing sound on the floor. Jiang Yuqing knitted his brows and paced back and forth. He even felt as if he had been bewitched. "Yuqing, what's wrong with you?" A voice suddenly sounded from behind. Jiang Yuqing was shocked and turned around. A woman in a gorgeous palace gown was standing behind him without him knowing. Her facial features were beautiful, and her makeup was exquisite. She looked like someone from a painting. Only that pair of eyes flashed with a cold glint from time to time. It was like a poisonous snake that made one feel uneasy. Jiang Yuqing suppressed the frustration in his heart, and his expression returned to its usual gentleness. "Waner, why are you here?" Shang Guanwan walked forward and leaned into his embrace. "I missed you. You haven't entered the palace for a few days. I'm so bored by myself." It was supposed to be a warm, fragrant, and soft woman, but for some reason, Jiang Yuqing was a little distracted. He hugged Shang Guanwan's shoulders and lightly patted them. "Didn't I tell you previously? I'll be busy preparing for the Wanzhong competition these few days, so I'll be busier and can't enter the palace to visit you often. After this period of time, I'll definitely accompany you properly, okay?" Shang Guanwan looked up at him. "Oh right, didn't you go to watch the preliminaries today? How was it?" Jiang Yuqing said, "All right. There are a few good seedlings. Nurture them well, and they'll definitely become very capable. You'll be able to see them later." Shang Guanwan revealed a look of joy as she hugged Jiang Yuqing's waist tightly and rubbed her face against his chest as she acted coquettishly. "I knew that Yuqing treats me the best," Jiang Yuqing nonchalantly replied with a grunt. Shang Guanwan then realized that something was amiss with him. "Yuqing, what's wrong? Are you thinking about something?" He rarely revealed such an expression. Jiang Yuqing smiled and kissed her glabella. "Nothing. I'm just a little tired today." Shang Guanwan only thought that he was working hard because of the Wanzhong competition during this period of time, so she didn't ask much. However, she came in exchange for Jiang Yuqing's calm reaction, which inevitably made her unhappy. She let go of Jiang Yuqing and took 2 steps back with a cold expression. "Then have a good rest. I'll get going first." How could Jiang Yuqing not tell that she was throwing a tantrum? All right. Waner, don't be angry. Why don't you tell me how the situation in the palace has been recently? Didn't His Majesty start taking medicine some time ago? How is it now? Are there any signs of him waking up?" Shang Guanwan pouted. "How would I know? I didn't go and take a look." Jiang Yuqing was dazed. "You didn't go and take a look? Didn't I tell you previously to pay attention to His Majesty's situation at all times?" "You, Jiang Yuqing, are you ordering me? Imperial Father has always been watched. I just didn't want to go these 2 days. Do you have to be like this? I finally came out to see you today, and this is how you treat me?" Shang Guanwan was also anxious. Jiang Yuqing fiercely rubbed his face, suppressing the anger in his heart and patiently persuading her. "Waner, it's not that I'm forcing you to do anything. It's just that it's a special period recently. You also know that in order to make His Majesty wake up, we've already used countless methods. Now that there are finally some signs, you must watch carefully. If something goes wrong, what can go wrong?" Shang Guanwan sneered. "Right now, the entire palace is filled with our people. After Imperial Father wakes up, he'll only know what he should know. What exactly are you worried about? Could it be that you're afraid that that slut will come back to life and take revenge on us?" Jiang Yuqing's expression changed drastically. Shang Guanwan was always like this. If she had nothing to do, she would make a fuss. Otherwise, she would feel uncomfortable all over. Especially after her Yuan meridian was damaged, she couldn't cultivate. Her temperament changed drastically, and she only thought about herself all day long. She didn't have any sense of the big picture at all. Normally, he would have the patience to coax her, but today he really wasn't in the mood. Moreover, her last sentence just now made his heart skip a beat. He said angrily, "What nonsense are you talking about?" Digression. This chapter took a full 20 minutes to upload. In the end, it was uploaded from the computer to the mobile phone. This backend was also drunk. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the AI network. Chapter 501. Shang Guanwan was shocked. Jiang Yuqing had never been so angry at her before. She was also angry in her heart. Who are you talking nonsense? Jiang Yuqing, do you know who you are talking to now? Only then did Jiang Yuqing come to his senses. He turned around and took a few deep breaths, before he gradually calmed down. Wan I didn't mean to scold you. You also know that there have been too many things recently. If we're not careful, It wasn't easy for us to wait a few days. If we waste all our previous efforts because of a small matter, wouldn't it be too much of a loss? He walked in front of Shang Guanwan again, intending to hug her in his arms. It wasn't easy for us to get together. Shang Guanwan slapped his hand away and sneered. Jiang Yuqing, don't you think it's too fake for you to say this now? She had clearly seen the disgust on his face just now. Don't you think that I'm not good enough for you because my Yuan meridian is crippled? Let me tell you, there are plenty of people in the Tianling dynasty who want to take your place. Don't go too far. Shang Guanwan was now in power, so she was naturally not afraid of Jiang Yuqing. Jiang Yuqing's expression changed. He was mocking and despising her in his heart. Shang Guanwan still had not figured out what she relied on to be able to hold on for so long despite her Yuan meridian being damaged. If it wasn't for, Jiang Yuqing said gently, Wan you're really thinking too much. I'm doing all this for you. I've liked you for so many years. Don't you know best how I feel about you? It was only then that Shang Guanwan's expression softened. Really? Of course it's true. I was too anxious just now, so I didn't choose my words carefully. You also know how much I hate that woman. You mentioned it so suddenly, of course I don't take it to heart. These words finally reached Shang Guanwan's heart. She snorted. That's good. I hate her too. Jiang Yuqing held her waist. Let's not talk about it in the future, okay? When His Majesty wakes up, we'll get married. Only then did Shang Guanwan let the matter pass. You're not allowed to be so fierce to me in the future, Jiang Yuqing said with a smile. Of course. His eyes flashed with an extremely cold light. Mu Clan. After hearing Chang Wanzhou's words, Chu Luiyue didn't react for a while. Then how did you survive all these years? If he had it since he was very young, he shouldn't have lived to this age. Chang Wanzhou said, I used to have a fire seed in my body, but a year ago, that fire seed suddenly died out. I left Nanjiang and came to West Hill. Chu Luiyue guessed. The fire seed in your body was also given to you by that person. Yes. Then you must have known each other for a long time, right? Yes. Chu Luiyue was silent for a while. There were only two possibilities for the fire seed to suddenly die out. One was that the cultivator destroyed it himself, and the other was that the celestial physician, who condensed the fire seed, died. If it was the former possibility, Chang Wanzhou should have been burned by the fire seed in his body. However, she had just checked and found no. In other words, the person he was looking for was very likely dead. Knock knock. There was a sudden knock on the door. Miss Chu, the 100 Herbs building has sent the things you want. It was Duan Ziyu's voice. Chu Luiyue stood up and walked over to open the door. Duan Ziyu was instructing the people in the mansion to send in those things, which were piled up into a small mountain. Chu Luiyue glanced at his expression and found that he had calmed down in the face of these things. She went forward and counted them personally. Yes, this is it. After those people left, she began to pick out some of them and put them into her Qingquan bag. As soon as she moved, Duan Ziyu came over and presented something with both hands. Miss Chu, the vice general was worried that it would be inconvenient for you to carry these things, so he specially prepared an Qingquan ring for you. It will save you a lot of trouble. Chu Luiyue turned her head and saw a silver Qingquan ring lying quietly in his palm. Did Vice Admiral Mu really say that? She looked at Duan Ziyu with a faint smile. Duan Ziyu's expression remained unchanged as he said, yes. In fact, his original words were, let her buy it. Let her fill the Qingquan ring if she has the ability. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up. It would be a waste not to take advantage of a free gift. Mu Qinghe owed her more than 100,000 white crystal coins. She picked up the Qianquan ring without any guilt and injected a trace of force into it. A light flashed on the Qianquan ring, which meant that it recognized her as its owner. Chu Luyue checked it and found that the space inside was huge. It was more difficult to make a Qianquan ring than a Qianquan bag, and it had more space, so it was more expensive. This Qianquan ring alone cost a few thousand white crystal coins. However, compared to what she had spent before, it was just a drop in the ocean. Since Mu Qinghe didn't care, she wouldn't care either. Is Vice Admiral Mu busy now? I want to thank him personally. Chu Luyue looked sincere. Duan Ziyu coughed. The Vice General said that you have to attend the Wanzheng competition tomorrow, so you should rest well today. Other things aren't urgent now. Chu Luyue touched her nose. Mu Qinghe probably didn't want to see her now. In that case, I'll have to trouble Lieutenant Duan to help me convey my gratitude. Duan Ziyu hurriedly agreed. Chu Luyue put the herbs into the Qianquan ring and turned to go back into the house. Chang Wanzhou was still sitting there waiting for her. Chu Luyue took out a medicinal cauldron and took out all the herbs she needed, arranging them neatly at the side. She placed her hand at the entrance of the cauldron, and a ball of red flame instantly burned in the cauldron. She took out the green spiritual snake fruit and threw it in. A refreshing aroma instantly filled the air. Tongues of fire danced around the green spiritual snake fruit, and the fruit skin gradually turned red. The flesh inside also gradually became transparent, and in the end, it was like a piece of red fruit skin, wrapped in a ball of transparent liquid. At a certain point, the fruit skin cracked, and the fruit juice inside flowed out. Chu Luyue added the silver frost flower at the same time. When the transparent fruit juice dripped onto the silver frost flower, it immediately melted the frost on the blue petals. Then, the blue petals quickly turned into a small cluster of blue flames. A gust of hot air spread out from it. Duan Ziyu, who was standing outside, also smelled this faint medicinal fragrance and couldn't help but be slightly surprised. He knew that Chu Luyue was a celestial physician, but he always thought that her standard wouldn't be much. On one hand, there were very few people who could be an outstanding celestial physician while possessing the cultivation talent of the Daijing Yuan Meridian. On the other hand, her background was indeed ordinary. One had to know that cultivating an outstanding celestial physician required a lot of manpower and resources. When Chu Luyue bought those precious herbs, he actually didn't think much of it in his heart. After all, the rarer the treasure, the harder it was to condense a good medicinal effect. But now, it seemed that Chu Luyue was stronger than he imagined. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 502. Duan Ziyu thought for a moment and left. He's gone. Chang Wanzhou said coldly. Chu Luyue took out new herbs and threw them into the cauldron as she smiled. I know. You're deliberately refining pills for him to see, Chang Wanzhou said firmly. Chu Luyue was still smiling. Yes. I spent so much money on Vice Admiral Mu, so I have to let him know, right? Besides, Mu Qinghe knew that she could refine pills, and that she could already form pills. No one would say anything if she showed off her skills. Chang Wanzhou looked at her for a while before asking, Did he offend you? Chu Luyue didn't stop moving. She controlled the flames in the cauldron and divided them into several areas to refine. When all the herbs were refined, she poured another flame into the cauldron. Boom! The flames in the cauldron rose. She fused all the herbs together. Chu Luyue began to try to form the pills. Why do you ask? She stared at the pills that were gradually forming and asked calmly. I can tell. Chang Wanzhou vaguely sensed that Chu Luyue seemed to be a little unhappy. Chu Luyue sighed softly in her heart. Although Chang Wanzhou didn't know the ways of the world, he was extremely smart and sharp. Not really. It's just a small conflict. Chang Wanzhou didn't think so, but he didn't say anything else. Time passed bit by bit. The two of them didn't speak again. The entire room was so quiet that only the sound of the flames burning the herbs was exceptionally clear. In the middle of the night, the pill of essence was finally condensed. Buzz! A fluctuation spread out from the pill of essence. Chu Luyue was delighted. She was originally a little worried that she wouldn't succeed, But fortunately, her strength had greatly increased after she broke through to the third stage of the warrior realm, and it became much easier for her to form the pill. For others, there were too many things to learn and practice in order to break through on the path of celestial physician. However, this was not the case for her. In her previous life, she was already an 8th grade celestial physician. Even now, those prescriptions and techniques were still intact in her mind. As long as her force continued to increase, she would be able to smoothly break through to the rank of celestial physician. Chu Luiyue raised her hand, and the pill flew into her palm. This pill was green in color, and there were 3 distinct crimson lines on it, with one more faintly discernible. Chu Luiyue nodded with satisfaction, and handed the pill to Chang Wanzhou. Then he placed his hand on the cauldron again. Not long after, an identical medicinal pill appeared within the crimson flames. Wang. The familiar fluctuation came again. An idea popped up in Chu Luiyue's mind, and the pill flew toward Chang Wanzhou. Chang Wanzhou sized up the 2 green pills in his hand, then looked at Chu Luiyue. Most celestial physician could only refine 1 pill at a time, but Chu Luiyue could refine so many at the same time. He was starting to suspect that she was lying when she said that she couldn't condense a fire seed. Wang. The 3rd pill was successfully refined. Chu Luiyue raised her hand, and the pill landed in her palm. Only then did she extinguish the flames in the cauldron. When she turned around and saw Chang Wanzhou's suspicious expression, she smiled and raised her eyebrows. I'm not lying to you. I really can't condense a fire seed now. I was able to refine these 3 pills only because the herbs I used were not bad. Also, the cold evil energy in your body has existed for many years. If I use too strong of a medicine from the beginning, it will only do more harm than good. Take these 3 pills once every 10 days. And take your time to figure out how to use them. Only then did Chang Wanzhou believe her. He nodded and swallowed one of the pills in his hand. The pill melted as soon as it entered his mouth, and a warm aura quickly spread out. Chang Wanzhou's eyes lit up. Chu Luiyue packed the remaining 2 pills for him. Go back and recuperate. You might need to help me in the future competition. Chang Wanzhou nodded seriously. I'm your follower now. This is what I should do. Chu Luiyue smiled and didn't argue with him. She let him go back. After Chang Wanzhou left, she sat cross-legged and began to regulate her breathing. After the battle with Zhao Yunji today, she clearly felt that the force in her body seemed to have become more solid. She was also getting closer to breaking through the barrier of a stage 4 warrior. On a quiet night, the night wind blew. However, in a certain room in the Xiahou residence, it wasn't so peaceful. Xiahou Rong frowned and looked at his second son standing in front of him. Tingan, what's wrong with you? Didn't I tell you to get along well with Jiang Yuji? It's already time to talk about marriage, but you suddenly made her angry. What's wrong with you? Xiahou Tingan looked frustrated. You really can't blame me for today's matter. As he spoke, he briefly recounted what had happened in the 100 Herbs building. Thinking of Jiang Yuji's appearance back then, he was still furious. If there's a first time, there will be a second time. Since I opened my mouth today, she'll be even worse tomorrow, and dig out our Xiahou family's foundation. He had also tried to like Jiang Yuji before. After all, her background and looks were considered good. However, her personality, he really couldn't stand it. Xiahou Rong held a pair of metal walnuts in his hands and said after a while, her personality is spoiled. Her temper is a little spoiled, but who asked her to have a good father and a good brother? So many people want to get close to the Jiang family now. What can you do even if you tolerate it? How about this? If it involves Jiang Yuji in the future, you can make an extra payment. You don't have to let the other people in the residence know. However, Xiahou Tingan said, we haven't even gotten engaged and she's already like this. I wonder what will happen when we get married in the future. I think it's fine if we don't get engaged. Pack. Xiahou Rong suddenly slammed the table. Are you crazy? Digression. The recent updates aren't displayed. Everyone can click on the table of contents and click on the reverse order, and it will appear. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 503. Xiahou Tingan shuddered and unknowingly took 2 steps back. Xiahou Rong angrily said, "What have I told you over the past year? Have you forgotten all of it? Jiang Yuqing only has this biological sister. As long as you make her happy, you can have anything you want. You're about to get engaged, but you want to give up at this time? You have to know that with her current status, she's more than enough for you. If you don't want to serve her, there are plenty of people fighting to do it." Xiahou Tingan knew all this. If not, he wouldn't have tolerated Jiang Yuji for so long. But as time passed, he became more and more resistant to this matter. Jiang Yuji had been arrogant since she was young. After Jiang Yuqing took over, she relied on this identity and became even worse. What happened in the 100 Herbs building today was just a prelude. He really didn't want to see Jiang Yuji's arrogant face. Seeing that Xiahou Tingan didn't say anything, Xiahou Rong was afraid that he would really be ruthless and make things worse. Hence, he softened his tone and said earnestly, "A man is a man. You have to know when to yield and when not to. As long as you can stabilize Jiang Yuji, you'll be able to achieve great things in the future. You also know that among your brothers, father values you the most. In the future, this family business will be handed to you sooner or later. You have to make me feel assured." This sentence finally made Xiahou Tingan waver. Each of his brothers had their own strengths. Actually, he wasn't the most outstanding. His biggest trump card was Jiang Yuqing, who was behind Jiang Yuji. Even though his wedding with the 3rd princess hadn't happened yet, who didn't know that Jiang Yuqing was already the most powerful person in the Tianling dynasty? "I'll go to the Jiang residence tomorrow to apologize," said Xiahou Tingan. He grunted. Xiahou Rong then heaved a sigh of relief, and the wrinkles on his face relaxed. He walked forward and patted Xiahou Tingan's shoulders. "Not bad. You didn't let me down for thinking highly of you all these years." Xiahou Tingan forced a smile. The next morning, Chu Luyue brought Chang Wanzhou to Xuanji Square, and Duan Ziyu naturally accompanied them. Compared to the previous day, there were a lot more people, and the square was even more lively. Elder Qiushi and Elder Duanmu Chun were already waiting in the middle of the square. Other than the 2 of them, there were 6 other old men in white robes standing at the side. The 8 of them stood in pairs in 4 directions. There was an empty space in the middle. As for the contestants who had won the previous day, they had all gathered and stood at the edge of the square. Chu Luyue quickly glanced around and frowned. What was going on with the Wanjing meet? 8 royal elders had come at once. Such a scale was truly rare. Soon it was time. Elder Qiushi and the others looked at each other and nodded. Then several people attacked at the same time. 8 vigorous origin powers instantly converged together. The void suddenly fluctuated, and the 8 origin forces intertwined to form a vortex. In the depths of the vortex, a transparent octagonal barrier slowly emerged. In the middle of the barrier, a strange pattern was faintly discernible. A powerful divine pressure suddenly spread out from the barrier. Chu Luyue's heart trembled violently. This pressure. As you can see, this is a barrier, but at the same time, it's also a special teleportation array. Elder Qiushi looked at the transparent octagonal barrier and couldn't hide his excitement. The destination of this teleportation array is the Tianling God Realm. After a short moment of dead silence, the entire square was instantly in an uproar. Tianling God Realm? Is that where the Tianling dynasty's Taizu passed away? I heard that back then. Taizu summoned the heavenly Tao and wanted to break through to become a stage 9 martial artist. But in the end, due to various reasons, he didn't succeed. Instead, he left the heavenly Tao behind, and that mystic realm was called the Tianling God Realm from then on. But isn't that place only accessible to the royal family? Why is it now? Elder Qiushi pressed his hands together and waited for the discussion in the square to gradually die down before he said excitedly, "Looks like everyone has some understanding of the Tianling God Realm." That's right. Previously, only those with royal bloodline could enter the Tianling God Realm. But after thinking for a long time, the 3rd princess thinks that opening up the Tianling God Realm to allow more cultivators to have the chance to become strong is a better choice. So, the Wanzhong competition this time will be held in the Tianling God Realm. Chu Luyue's face was cold. His hands and his sleeves were clenched into fists, and his knuckles turned white. The Tianling God realm was left behind by the Taizu, and Shangguan actually dared to do this privately. This was undoubtedly disrespectful. Even she hadn't entered that place before. She originally planned to go after becoming a stage 9 martial artist, but before she could do so, Shangguan and Jiang Yuqing had already plotted against her. She never expected that Shangguan had already sealed herself to such an extent. What Elder Qiushi said just now was just the high-sounding reason. The Tianling God realm was filled with danger, and those with low cultivation levels would only die if they entered. Perhaps only Shangguan herself knew what exactly she wanted to do. No, perhaps there was also Jiang Yuqing. Chu Luyue was filled with rage, but the others clearly didn't think so. Tianling God realm. It's actually the Tianling God realm. If I can go in once, I'll have no regrets in my life. I heard that the Taizu left behind many treasures there back then. We might be able to obtain some fortuitous opportunities this time. The third princess is really magnanimous. She's actually willing to open up the Tianling God realm. Such breadth of mind is truly unmatched. The surrounding contestants were all agitated and excited. They were all geniuses with Daijing Yuan meridians, and were extremely confident in themselves. This time was no exception. Besides, who didn't want to become stronger? With such an opportunity, they naturally wouldn't let it go. Elder Qiushi continued. There's still no time limit for the competition this time. Whoever stays in there for the longest time will get first place. Everyone looked at each other for a moment. The competition rules were a little strange. As if sensing everyone's doubts, Elder Qiushi explained. The heavenly Tao's suppression in the Tianling God realm is extremely strong. The stronger one's talent and strength, the more they can withstand such power. Hence, the longer one stays in there, the more benefits it will bring to the cultivators. Everyone nodded in understanding. Their eyes lit up, and they couldn't wait to enter now. Elder Qiushi raised his finger and pointed at the black jade slab floating in midair. The name of each of you is recorded here. Every time someone comes out, their name will automatically disappear from here. The person who stays in the end will be the biggest winner. His words stirred everyone up. Chu Luyue looked on coldly. If she could, she wanted to stop this strange competition immediately. But she knew she couldn't. The only thing she could do now was to continue the competition and see with her own eyes what exactly they were planning to do. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 504. Everyone, enter according to the order. Someone immediately stepped forward after Elder Qiushi gave the order. The first young man walked to the octagonal barrier, unable to hide his excitement. He reached out his hand. As soon as he touched the barrier, a silver light suddenly flashed and enveloped his entire body. Soon, his figure disappeared in front of everyone. The second person followed closely behind. Chang Wanzhou suddenly said, I can't follow you anymore. Chu Luyue glanced at him and nodded slightly. I'm 53, and you're 92. There's a gap in the middle. After entering, there's a high chance that we won't be able to be together. Chang Wanzhou pursed his lips. I'll look for you. Chu Luyue was slightly stunned. The corners of her lips curled up. Just as she was about to say something, she heard him say again. Before I find you, the contract won't count for the time being. Only then did Chu Luyue understand what he meant. He was saying that the agreement would be postponed for every day that he didn't fulfill his obligation as an attendant. Actually, this is nothing. It'll be good if we can meet, but if not, I'll definitely find you. Chang Wanzhou said stubbornly. Chu Luyue smiled. Okay. Sometimes this child's stubbornness was quite interesting. Soon, it was Chu Luyue's turn. She walked over. Standing in front of it, the pattern on the barrier became even clearer. This was the totem of the Tianling dynasty. It had a dragon's head and a lion's body, ferocious and majestic. A sharp sword hung above its head. This pattern was also engraved on the military flag of the Black Cavalry. It was rumored that the Taizu personally drew it back then. There were also different opinions about this totem. The most well-known explanation was that the Taizu once held a sharp sword and beheaded the dragon's head. His reputation was illustrious. That was why he drew such a totem later. However, no one could be sure of the truth. Chu Luiyue had once flipped through all the history books of the Tianling dynasty. The Taizu didn't leave behind a single word about this totem. Back then, she was full of yearning for the Tianling god realm. As the second person in the Tianling dynasty, other than the Taizu, with the Tianjing Yuan meridian in the past 1,000 years, not only to the world, but also herself was full of confidence and expectations. Many people in the royal family had entered the Tianling god realm to obtain the Taizu's inheritance, but they all failed in the end. Chu Luiyue once thought that she might be able to do it, but she didn't expect that she actually entered to enter the Tianling god realm with another identity. She took a deep breath and extended her hand toward the barrier. She felt a cool touch, and a white light flashed in front of her eyes. She was immediately pulled in by a force. After a bout of dizziness, Chu Luiyue finally felt her feet on solid ground. She focused her gaze and looked forward. She was instantly stunned by the scene in front of her. This was a huge space that stretched as far as the eye could see. The sky seemed to have been split in the middle by something. Half of the sky was covered with purplish-orange clouds, and it was as dark as night. A bright moon hung in the sky, and a cold wind blew. Transparent water could be seen everywhere, and everything in the sky was reflected in it. The other half was cloudless, and it was as bright as day. The sun emitted a blinding light, shining on the dry and cracked ground. At a glance, not a single blade of grass grew. It was desolate and withered. At this moment, she was standing in the middle of this dividing line. She looked down. The water on her left flowed quietly, but it seemed to be blocked by a transparent barrier, and it never crossed the boundary. On the dry land on her right, cracks spread across the ground like spider webs. The wind that carried coarse sand always turned back when it reached the boundary. Everything on both sides seemed to never intersect, and was thus isolated. When Chu Luiyue saw this, she was extremely shocked. So this was how the Tianling god realm looked like. She looked around, but she didn't see the people who came in earlier. As expected, they were separated. Chu Luiyue stood where she was for a while. By the looks of it, she clearly had to make a choice. She turned around and walked toward the left. She stepped into the water, and circles of ripples spread out. The clear water just covered the soles of her shoes. She paused. After confirming that the water didn't continue to spread, and that she didn't feel anything special, she continued walking forward. However, she had only taken a few steps when she felt the piercing cold wind around her. The force in her body was starting to disperse without her noticing. Chu Luiyue hastily condensed her force, but she realized that she couldn't stop this at all. Her body was like a container with a crack. The origin power contained within was slowly flowing away like a stream of water. However, she didn't know what the problem was. Chu Luiyue retreated without hesitation. She glanced at the water, that seemed to stretch to the end of the sky with lingering fear. She could even see the bright moon reflected in it. However, she was no longer in the mood to admire the beautiful scenery. Instead, she was filled with fear. She stood in the middle again. Then she walked to the right. The moment she stepped on the dry and cracked ground, a scorching heat wave hit her in the face. Fortunately, Chu Luiyue was a celestial physician, so her tolerance for fire was still very high. She was slightly relieved and walked forward. After a while, her forehead and body were covered in sweat, and her throat was very dry. Walking under the dazzling and scorching sun, her whole body felt like it was being roasted by fire. Chu Luiyue coughed. She felt like smoke was going to come out of her throat. Just as she was hesitating whether to summon the flames in her body to resist the scorching heat, she suddenly felt something slowly seeping into her body along her skin. She immediately frowned. Only then did she realize that what was entering her body wasn't anything else but thick and dense force. The density of heaven and earth force here wasn't high, but it seemed to be controlled by something and kept flowing into her body. As expected of the Tianling god realm, it's really the best place for cultivation. At this moment, cheers suddenly came from afar. Chu Luiyue looked up. It was a young man. She didn't know when he had appeared here. His clothes were almost completely drenched in sweat. His forehead was full of sweat, and his cheeks were red. However, he didn't care at all and kept walking forward. Obviously, he had been here for a while. His face was filled with excitement, as if he had opened a treasure trove. Chu Luiyue sharply realized that his aura was rising at an extremely fast speed. The speed of the heaven and earth force flowing into his body was several times faster than hers. A trace of uneasiness appeared in Chu Luiyue's heart. There was a limit to the endurance of an ordinary cultivator's physical body. If the heaven and earth force absorbed exceeded one's limit, then it would be harmful. In serious cases, it would even cause permanent damage to the body, and even cause death. Just as this thought flashed through her mind, Chu Luiyue saw the young man suddenly stagger and spit out a mouthful of blood with a red face. Wonderful Bookhouse. Chapter 505. The man was shocked as well. At the same time, he finally realized that something was wrong. He wanted to stop the force from entering his body, but he was shocked to find that he couldn't control it at all. The surrounding force of heaven and earth was still pouring into his body. His body was boiling hot, and his face was red. The force in his body was surging, and he spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood. He hurriedly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, but from the corner of his eye, he saw that his sleeve was already red. That was the blood on his arm. He hurriedly rolled up his sleeves and looked at his arm. He didn't know when, but there was a bloody wound that was about an inch long. Fresh blood flowed out, and quickly dyed his sleeve red. What's going on?" he muttered softly, his face full of fear. Then, as if he suddenly realized something, he turned and ran. He wanted to return to the center. However, he fell to the ground before he could take 2 steps. He struggled to get up, and there were actually bloodstains on the ground. The other parts of his body were also starting to be torn apart by the violent force. He was still quite a distance away from the center of the 2 skies. It would be very difficult for him to return in time if he relied on his own strength. Then, he looked around and finally saw Chu Luiyue. I beg you, help me." He let out an urgent and weak cry for help. Chu Luiyue retracted her gaze and continued walking. She didn't have any extra sympathy, especially for this kind of greedy person. Since he dared to participate in the Wanzhong competition, he should have made the corresponding preparations. He could only blame himself for coming to this point. "Help me. I can repay you." Chu Luiyue didn't even turn her head. The pitiful cries for help gradually turned into vulgar curses. However, the voice quickly turned into surprised cheers again. Thank you. I really don't know how to thank you." Chu Luiyue turned around to take a look. A white-clothed woman walked up to the man and helped him up. She asked softly, "What's wrong? Are you all right? Can you still walk?" The man said gratefully, I, please help me back. I can't stay here any longer." As he spoke, more blood flowed out of his body. The woman smiled gently. "Okay." After saying that, he suddenly pulled out a rope from his sleeve and tied the man up. She had just arrived and was much stronger than the man. Plus, the man was unprepared, so she easily subdued him. What are you doing?" Only then did he realize that something was wrong, so he shouted fiercely. The woman shook her wrist and threw the man to the ground. Bang! There was a muffled sound. The back of the man's head hit the ground. He was in so much pain that his face for a moment. The woman still had a gentle and generous smile on her face. "Didn't you want me to help you? I'll help you." Then she used the ropes pulled the man's eyes. A long trail of blood was drawn on the ground. That man's the one's eyes. Just as he was about to curse, he found that his mouth was full of blood, and he couldn't say a word. His throat seemed to be choked by something, and he only managed to make a few sounds before his movements gradually quieted down. After being dragged for a distance, he finally fainted. The woman stopped and walked forward, intending to check his breathing. The bronze bead in the man's hand suddenly emitted a ray of light and enveloped him. The woman quickly took a few steps back. After the ray of light disappeared, the man's figure was also gone. Only the bloodstains on the ground that hadn't dried up showed what had just happened. The woman said unwillingly, "You're lucky." Although she didn't kill him, she still drove him out of the competition. She could get rid of as many people as she could. She turned around and bumped into Chu Luiyue. The two of them looked at each other. A trace of panic flashed through the woman's eyes. She didn't see that there was another person here at all. Did she see everything just now? Chu Luiyue looked her up and down. Looking at her clothes, she seemed to be from Xianfeng Hall. She couldn't help but smile. This vicious and merciless temperament was really from the same origin. The hall master of Xianfeng Hall was a ruthless person. He had fought with her many times in the open and in the dark. Now, she actually met one of them again. Moreover, this woman's face looked a little familiar. The woman's expression changed very quickly. She smiled at Chu Luiyue. I recognize you. You're Chu Luiyue, aren't you? Chu Luiyue had only been in West Hill for 2 or 3 days, but she had already become famous. She wasn't surprised that this woman recognized her. She nodded and asked in return, You are? I'm Ning Jiaojiao. She smiled. Chu Luiyue suddenly remembered this person's identity. The only daughter of the hall master of Xianfeng Hall, Ning Binghai Ning Jiaojiao. She actually came too. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. Ning Jiaojiao could only be considered delicate and pretty. She was easily overlooked in a crowd. Moreover, although she was talented, those who participated in the Wanzhong competition were all top geniuses. She didn't stand out in the qualifiers the day before. That was why Chu Luiyue didn't notice her. Seeing that Chu Luiyue didn't speak, Ning Jiaojiao felt a little guilty. Well, I wanted to take him out just now, but, she wanted to find an excuse, but she didn't know how much Chu Luiyue saw. Chu Luiyue smiled. Aren't we the only two here? Ning Jiaojiao was stunned then smiled. Yes. Chu Luiyue didn't like to look for trouble, so he took the initiative to clarify. Ning Jiaojiao was obviously relieved. Chu Luiyue said, I have something to do, so I'll leave first. With that, he turned around and was about to leave. Wait! Ning Jiaojiao suddenly called out to Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue glanced at her again. Miss Ning, is there anything else? Ning Jiaojiao's expression had returned to its usual gentle and generous expression. As she walked forward, she said, Miss Chu, don't you think this place is very strange? Chu Luiyue looked around. It's all right. She didn't expect Taizu to leave such a place behind. However, after the initial shock, she recalled Taizu's great achievements of conquering the world and opening up new territories and felt relieved. The smile on Ning Jiaojiao's face froze. It's all right. What does he mean? Is he saying that I'm ignorant, or he doesn't want to talk to me at all? She couldn't accept either of the two. She suppressed the anger in her heart and smiled faintly. Miss Chu, look. This place is desolate and remote, and it's full of strangeness. Why don't we work together? Chu Luiyue glanced at her with a faint smile. Did Ning Jiaojiao think that everyone in the world was so brainless? No need. I still have to find someone, so it's not convenient for me to go with you. With that, Chu Luiyue turned around and was about to leave. Ning Jiaojiao paused and said, In that case, I'd like to ask a question. What's your relationship with Jian Fengqi of Dragon Teeth Mountain? Wonderful Bookhouse. Chapter 506. I have nothing to do with young Master Jian. Chu Luiyue said honestly. Ning Jiaojiao didn't quite believe her. Oh, how can that be? Wasn't young Master Jian the one who brought Miss Chu to the Wanzhong competition? Chu Luiyue glanced at her. It turned out that Ning Jiaojiao had already investigated and was asking her on purpose. However, it was obvious that her investigation wasn't very good. After all, the one who really had something to do with her was Mu Qinghe. However, she didn't admit or deny it. So, young Master Jian has a free and easy temperament. It's rare to see him do such things. It can be seen that he truly admires Miss Chu. Ning Jiaojiao's expression didn't change, but her tone was a little sour. Chu Luiyue finally understood, and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was Ning Jiaojiao jealous? What was she thinking? How could she be jealous of something like this? Jian Fengqi had been a playboy for many years, and had countless admirers. If she was jealous of a girl, she should have died of jealousy long ago. Miss Ning, don't misunderstand. There's really nothing between young Master Jian and me. He was only responsible for bringing me to Xiling. The rest has nothing to do with him. I still have things to do, so I'll take my leave first. With that, Chu Liyue didn't say anything else and turned to leave. Hey! Ning Jiaojiao called out. But Chu Liyue didn't stop and quickly walked away. Looking at that slender and exquisite figure, the smile on Ning Jiaojiao's face gradually disappeared. Nothing to do with her? She didn't believe it. She had already asked her father previously. Jian Fengqi wasn't among the people sent out by the Wanzheng competition this time. However, he actually brought Chu Liyue back and let her participate in the Wanzheng competition. Wasn't this clearly giving Chu Liyue a chance? Who outside Heaven's canopy didn't want to come in? Who didn't want to have a place in Xiling? This Chu Liyue used some unknown method to persuade Jian Fengqi to help her. This time, she must teach Chu Liyue a lesson. Chu Liyue continued to go deeper. Sweat kept dripping from her head, face and body, but before it could drip down, it had already evaporated. After walking for a while, she finally summoned the flames in her body. A layer of crimson flames instantly surrounded her. Chu Liyue hadn't even had the time to breathe a sigh of relief when she suddenly discovered something even more frightening. The surrounding origin power of heaven and earth had suddenly sped up and surged into her body. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. Only then did he realize that the flames on his body were actively devouring this energy. She seemed to have sensed something and looked towards her dantian. Sure enough, she discovered that the water droplet had already begun to slowly rotate. The power that had entered its body was quickly absorbed by it. But to Chu Liyue's relief, when the power fell into the water droplet, it was like a drop of water falling into the sea, silent and calm. The power that had been devoured only flowed through the Yuan meridian in her body, and finally gathered in the water droplet. Chu Liyue blinked in surprise. In this way, on one hand, she could refine her Yuan meridian, and on the other hand, she didn't have to worry about being unable to withstand the power and ending up in the same situation as the man from before. Chu Liyue retracted the flames around her body. The speed of the origin power of heaven and earth had slowed down slightly, but perhaps because it was gradually going deeper, the speed was also gradually increasing. Chu Liyue was emboldened and continued forward under the scorching sun. As she walked, a strange fluctuation suddenly came from afar. Chu Liyue looked as far as she could and saw a huge black sword at the place where heaven and earth met. That black sword seemed to have fallen from the sky and pierced into the ground. A vast and holy aura spread out from it. Chu Liyue suddenly felt a strange sense of familiarity in her heart. This aura, she had felt it before. In the Imperial Ancestral Hall, she had seen the relics left behind by the Taizu Emperor. Those devices had such an aura. She increased her speed and walked forward. After some time, she finally saw the appearance of that black sword. The pitch-black body of the sword was as deep and boundless as the dark night. A silver bolt of lightning suddenly flashed. It slithered away like a startled snake. It caused icy blue sparks to fly everywhere. In an instant, huge waves of emotions surged in her heart. This was the Taizu Emperor's sword. It was rumored that the Taizu Emperor Shangguanjing had once borrowed 81 Tianlei Dragon Abyss swords. Summon the heavenly Tao and slay divine beasts. Sweep across the world and be invincible. Later on, the Taizu Emperor failed to break through to the 9th stage and passed away in the Tianling God realm. The Dragon Abyss sword that he carried with him was also left somewhere in the Tianling God realm. For thousands of years, the Tianling Imperial family had tried all sorts of ways to get the Dragon Abyss sword back, but they had never succeeded. Chu Liyue had always thought that it was because the Dragon Abyss sword was hidden too well, and no one had ever found it. But now, it seemed that the Dragon Abyss sword was on the ground. She could easily see it. Then why did all the records in the Imperial family's secret scrolls say that no one had ever seen the Dragon Abyss sword? Chu Liyue felt that she had fallen into a huge mystery. The fog in front of her was thick, and she couldn't see anything clearly. She took a deep breath and looked at the huge Dragon Abyss sword. Even from such a far distance, he could still feel the sacred and vast aura of suppression. She seemed to be attracted by something and walked forward. Suddenly she stepped on something. She looked down, and her pupils constricted. It was actually a piece of white bone. From the shape, it seemed to be a human arm. And it seemed to be quite old. Chu Luiyue looked around and finally saw another piece of white bone in front of her. That was the direction towards the Dragon Abyss sword. Chu Luiyue vaguely guessed something. She walked towards the Dragon Abyss sword step by step. The closer she got, the scarier the surrounding temperature became, and the faster the heaven and earth force surged into her body. Fortunately, Chu Luiyue had a mid-level Daijing Yuan meridian, and she didn't have to worry about being unable to withstand the force. That water droplet was like a bottomless pit, constantly swallowing the force. Every once in a while, she would see scattered white bones on the ground. Finally, when she saw the skull that had been split in half, her heart skipped a beat. If she didn't guess wrongly, there should be someone who wanted to take the Dragon Abyss sword, but was injured by something, and his body was constantly being cut. Until the skull was cut in half, that person finally stopped. How much willpower did he have? Chu Luiyue stood beside the skull and looked at the Dragon Abyss sword. Between heaven and earth it was empty. Only this Dragon Abyss sword stood majestically. Chu Luiyue recalled the traces of the white bones that she saw just now. It was clearly cut off by something sharp. In all directions it was empty, and there was no wind. A chill suddenly rose from the bottom of Chu Luiyue's feet. Only the Dragon Abyss sword was able to produce such power. Just as she thought of this, the sound of a sword suddenly resounded through heaven and earth. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 507. Chu Luiyue heard a roar in her ears. That deep and vigorous sword hum entered her ears and went straight to her heart. In the next moment, a biting cold black sword chi suddenly flew out from the long yuan sword. It charged towards Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue tiptoed and quickly retreated. But how powerful was the sword chi of the long yuan sword? In the blink of an eye, it had already flown in front of Chu Luiyue. It almost pierced through her forehead. Chu Luiyue suddenly waved a fire whip in her hand. It struck towards the sword chi. The two forces collided fiercely. The red fire whip was actually scattered by the sword chi in an instant. Chu Luiyue was slightly shocked and immediately threw out the colored glaze barrier. Ding! A clear and crisp sound was heard. That terrifying sword chi hit the colored glaze barrier. Just as Chu Luiyue's mind was spinning crazily, thinking of how to take advantage of this opportunity to quickly escape, she was shocked to see that the sword chi was actually blocked by the colored glaze barrier. Several silver streams of light flowed back and forth on the colored glaze barrier, gorgeous and brilliant. That black sword chi was blocked by it, but it was unable to move forward even half an inch. Chu Luiyue was full of shock. This long yuan sword was a divine weapon, so it was easy to imagine how terrifying the sword chi it produced was. But this colored glaze barrier actually blocked it? An absurd conjecture suddenly appeared in her mind. The colored glaze barrier that Rong Xiu gave her. Could it also be? She was sure that the first one that Rong Xiu gave her was definitely not this powerful. Otherwise, Rong Xiu would not give her a second one because it was damaged. Just now, in a moment of desperation, she just casually threw out the colored glaze barrier. Who knew that it actually blocked the terrifying sword chi? Boom! The sword chi dissipated. Chu Luiyue stared blankly. It was solved just like that. This was too. Go forward. A voice suddenly came from the bottom of her heart. It was the legendary three-eyed eagle. Chu Luiyue asked doubtfully. What? There is the skeleton of a divine beast under that sword. The legendary three-eyed eagle said quickly and concisely. Although its voice was as cold as ever, Chu Luiyue could hear a hint of excitement in its voice. Chu Luiyue blinked his eyes and asked incredulously. What? Don't tell me you want me to get it for you? Was there a mistake? That was the Dragon Abyss sword, the legendary three-eyed eagle said. If you want to help me recover my physical body, the bones of divine beasts are essential. Therefore you must go this time. Chu Luiyue was unwilling to give up and asked. It's not like this is the only place in this world that has divine beast skeletons. Let's go somewhere else to find them. Where? The legendary three-eyed eagle asked coldly. As long as it is a divine beast, its bones must be returned to its clan after death. To be able to find the skeleton of a divine beast that had been left out. This kind of opportunity was hard to come by. If he gave up today, it would be difficult for him to find another one in the future. Chu Luiyue rubbed the space between his eyebrows. But you saw what happened just now. The Dragon Abyss sword is a divine weapon. Anyone who wants to get close to it will die. The power of a sword chi is already so terrifying. If I go now, won't I be courting death? Didn't you stop it? Chu Luiyue. That divine beast skeleton is suppressed by that sword. I can't determine which clan it belongs to for the time being. But when you get it, you will naturally know. Chu Luiyue. She closed her eyes and kept reminding herself in her heart that this was her contracted divine beast. This was her contracted divine beast. The divine beast that she found had to suffer even if it had to. Is there no other way? Chu Luiyue asked faintly. Why don't you go and try first and see if you can get that divine beast skeleton back? The legendary three-eyed eagle sneered mercilessly. Chu Luiyue. I'll go, okay? After saying that, Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and approached the Dragon Abyss sword again. At the same time, in the Xuanji Square, after all the contestants went in, the people in the square didn't leave. Although they couldn't see the exciting battles, they could at least see which of the names on the black jade board disappeared first. Moreover, those people had entered the Tianling God realm through the octagonal transportation portal. How rare was such an opportunity? Everyone was curious and excited. Naturally, they were willing to stay a little longer to see the results of the competition. I really don't know what the Tianling God realm is like. It's a pity that we don't have the Daijing Yuan Meridian. Otherwise, we can also go in and take a look. Yeah, even if we can only take a look, our lives will be worth it. In the past, so many top experts wanted to go in, but they couldn't. I just don't know who can stay in there the longest and get first place. Maybe there are many Taizu treasures inside. Look, someone's name is disappearing. Countless pairs of eyes looked at the floating black jade board. Number 31 Wu Ying. The 8 elders looked at each other. A figure was suddenly sent out of the transportation portal. Everyone looked over in unison. The young man seemed to have fainted. He was covered in blood and looked very miserable. The whole square was silent for a moment. All the excitement, anticipation, and envy from before seemed to have been splashed with a bucket of cold water, and it was suddenly extinguished. At this moment, they suddenly realized that the Tianling God realm was full of opportunities, but at the same time, it was also extremely dangerous. How long has it been since he went in? He's already injured to this extent. Looking at the name on the jade board, many people's faces were tinged with worry. In a remote corner, Jiang Yuqing looked expressionlessly and asked, How long has it been? How long did he last? Eldest young master 5 minutes. It's useless, Jiang Yuqing said coldly. Continue watching the others. Yes. Digression. Chapter 504 and 505 were missed in Xiaoxiang. Book City is normal. I'll go and find an editor to deal with it. Everyone please be patient. Mobile users please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 508. It was a little difficult to move around with the glass barrier, so Chu Luiyue hesitated for a while before putting it away. She held the dagger in her right hand and the glass barrier in her left, feeling much more at ease. She had to admit that Rongxiu's gifts were all good stuff. After walking for some distance, Chu Luiyue suddenly heard a commotion from afar. She looked up and saw 3 people walking over from another direction. The 2 men looked to be in their mid-20s, while the woman was younger and looked to be no more than 20 years old. Chu Luiyue vaguely remembered that these 3 people seemed to have entered before her, but it seemed that they didn't land in the same place as her. Thankfully, Martial Uncle prepared the simultaneous voice goo, so we could meet up at the fastest speed. Otherwise, the Tianling God realm is vast and boundless, and we would have already left before we could meet up. The skinny man in purple said with a joyful expression, That's right. I didn't think much of it before, but I didn't expect the Tianling God realm to be such an extraordinary place. The other man, who was much rounder and had a beard, nodded in agreement. The young woman standing between the two of them had an oval face. Her skin was fair and clean, and she looked delicate and pretty. Between her eyebrows, there was a hint of natural flirtatiousness. Thank you for your help just now, senior brothers. Otherwise, Cheener would have been eliminated long ago. As she spoke, she wiped the sweat off her forehead. Her cheeks were slightly red, and she looked even more lovely. The two men looked at her with eyes full of unconcealable adoration. Cheener, what are you saying? After this Wanzheng competition, you will be a disciple of our Purple Shao Sword sect. As your senior brothers, it is our duty to help you. That's right. Master and martial uncles are all very optimistic about you. The woman smiled shyly. The Purple Shao Sword sect is a top sect in Xiling. How can it be so easy to enter? If Cheener's ranking isn't good enough, I'm afraid I won't have the face to enter. Cheener, you're being too humble. You are only 19 years old this year, and you are already at the peak of the 5th stage. Among the participants in this Wanzheng competition, you are definitely one of the best. Besides, you're Yuan Meridian. The lanky man did not finish his words, but a look of envy flashed across his face. It was obvious that this girl's Yuan Meridian was even more outstanding than his. The bearded man also nodded and sighed. When you enter the Purple Shao Sword sect and officially start cultivating, it is very likely that you will surpass the two of us within 3 years. Senior brothers, please don't tease me. The woman hurriedly waved her hand. She appeared to be a bit shy, but the smile on her face became even more brilliant. Chu Liyue noticed that even though the trio's faces were slightly red, their surrounding auras were normal. Upon closer inspection, she realized that each of them was wearing a perfume pouch on their waists. Most of the origin power of heaven and earth in the surroundings was actually being devoured. Chu Liyue narrowed his eyes. Yuan devouring pouch. This thing looked no different from an ordinary perfume pouch, but it was actually woven from a special kind of Yuan devouring heavenly silk. It could automatically absorb the energy of heaven and earth and store it in large amounts. Only when the owner opened it would the origin power inside gush out. Some cultivators liked to carry it around with them, so that they could absorb the rich origin power of heaven and earth at any time and anywhere to speed up their cultivation. However, because of its high price, not everyone could afford it. But in all fairness, this was indeed a good way to deal with the current predicament. No wonder he was able to make it here without any incident. Chu Liyue retracted his gaze and was about to continue walking forward when those people happened to see her. Isn't that Chu Liyue? She actually came here too? To be able to defeat a stage 5 warrior, she indeed has some ability. To be able to last until now, the two men whispered. The woman's eyes turned. Senior brothers, why don't we invite her to come with us? The two men were taken aback, and then their expressions became a little awkward. Cheener, we don't know her. This isn't too good, right? The competition of the Wanzheng competition was still in progress. They were in a competitive relationship. How could they go together just because they wanted to? The woman didn't seem to expect such a reaction from the two and stammered. Cheener just thinks that she's a little pitiful being alone. But if both senior brothers feel that it's inappropriate, then forget it. The two men exchanged glances. The thin and tall man sighed and smiled. Cheener is indeed kind-hearted. Since you've already spoken, senior brother naturally has no reason to reject. As long as she doesn't cause any trouble, it's fine. The woman's eyes lit up as gratitude appeared on her face. Thank you, senior brother. The other bearded man shouted at Chu Liyue. Miss Chu, please wait. Miss Chu, this place is dangerous. It's especially dangerous to be alone. Why don't you come with us? This way we can take care of each other. How about it? Actually, Chu Liyue heard their conversation clearly. Compared to the two men, she was the most confused one. She had some impression of that woman. Her name was Yang Cheener. During the preliminaries, she defeated another participant who was also at the peak of stage 5 in 3 moves, causing quite a stir. With such talent and strength at such a young age, she was already eye-catching. Moreover, she was also beautiful. However, she didn't know her, and didn't know what she was planning to do. It was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Moreover, She was going to retrieve the divine beast skeleton under the Long Yuan sword. It was even more inconvenient for her to be with them. Chu Liyue shook her head and said politely, "Thank you for your kind offer. Thank you for your kind intentions, but I have an appointment with a friend, so I won't trouble you guys." They were all shocked. They didn't expect Chu Liyue to reject their suggestion. Was there something wrong with her brain? Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that she was much safer with them than alone. They were willing to help purely because of Qin Er's face, who knew that she didn't appreciate their kindness. Although Chu Liyue rejected them politely, in the eyes of others, she didn't know what was good for her. The thin and tall man frowned slightly and said to young Qin Er, you see. Qin Er, you've seen it for yourself. She doesn't want to be with us. You've wasted your kindness." Young Qin Er bit her lip. The bearded man snorted, stroked his beard and said meaningfully, "She's doing this because she doesn't trust us. Since that's the case, why should we stick our warm faces to her cold butt? Since she's so confident, let her do it herself. Let's see how long she can last in this place." The Purple Shao Sword sect had a very high status in West Ridge. They had always claimed to be the top sword sect, so most of their disciples were somewhat arrogant. Yang Qin Er was silent for a moment, but she still took a step forward and said gently to Chu Liyue, "Mississippi Chu, don't misunderstand. We're all good people. I just saw that there were many severed human bones here, and felt that it was very dangerous. It's safer for us to be together, isn't it?" Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 509. Has she made up her mind to pester me? Chu Liyue frowned slightly and glanced at Yang Qin Er. Her young and beautiful face was full of sincerity with a hint of uneasiness, as if she was really worried about Chu Liyue. However, they were not related to each other, so where did this sincerity and worry come from? Chu Liyue's lips curled up, and her smile became even more sincere and polite. "Thank you for your kind intentions, but I really can't go with you. I appreciate your kind intentions." Disappointment flashed across young Qin Er's face quickly. However, Chu Liyue's attitude was so firm, and she knew that she wouldn't be able to persuade her. She could only force a smile. "All right then. I hope everything goes well for Miss Chu." The tall, skinny man glanced at Chu Liyue coldly with a face full of dissatisfaction. "You don't know how to appreciate favors." He didn't lower his voice, so everyone present heard it clearly. Chu Liyue smiled faintly, and didn't take it to heart. She turned around and left. "Hey you." The tall, skinny man immediately felt that he was being looked down upon. He pointed at Chu Liyue, and was about to continue reprimanding her, but Yang Qin Er stopped him. "Senior brother, since it's inconvenient for her, let's not force her," she said gently as she pressed down the tall, skinny man's hand. Seeing that Chu Liyue had walked away without any burden, the bearded man finally couldn't help but grumble. Does she really think that she's so great just because she won a competition and can look down on everyone? The people from the Purple Shao Sword sect had always been the ones who tried to befriend them. When had they ever been rejected like this? Twice. Especially in front of Yang Qin Er. It was really embarrassing. Yang Qin Er smiled and hid the disappointment on her face. "Senior brother, let's go too. Didn't you guys say earlier that sword is very likely to be the legendary Dragon Abyss sword?" Speaking of this, the two men's attention was immediately diverted, and they couldn't hide the excitement on their faces. That's right. To be able to remain in the Tianling God realm, and have such an oppressive aura, only the legendary Long Yuan sword can exist, said the lanky man. "Uncle Master said that there would be opportunities here, but I didn't expect. This is the sword used by Taizu back then." The bearded man raised his head to look at the gigantic black sword that stood between the heavens and the earth. His eyes were filled with envy and admiration. "Our Purple Shao Sword sect specializes in sword techniques, and we have countless good swords in our sect. Especially Master. He has a green tomb sword that is extremely powerful. However, it is still much inferior when compared to this Long Yuan sword." Actually, it wasn't that there was a huge difference, but that they weren't even on the same level. A divine item like the Long Yuan sword was a one-of-a-kind treasure in the world. To be able to see it with his own eyes, this trip was truly worth it. Yang Qin'er's eyes flickered. Qin'er has heard some rumors about the Long Yuan sword. However, there was one thing that he didn't understand. Taizu had already passed away, so this Long Yuan sword had become an ownerless item. Why was it that after so many years, no one from the Tianling royal family took it out? Wouldn't it be a waste to just leave it here? The moment she said that, the two men burst out laughing. Qin'er, you only know one thing and don't know the other. This Long Yuan sword is a divine artifact, and it already has a sword soul. Even if Taizu is no longer around, it won't casually recognize an owner. So that's how it is. Yang Qin'er paused for a moment. This Long Yuan sword is extremely heavy. Rumor has it that when Taizu had just forged it, he purposely threw it to the accompanying troops. 1,000 soldiers moved out at the same time, but they still couldn't lift it. You have to know that the soldiers who could follow Taizu weren't ordinary people. This shows how powerful this Long Yuan sword is. As the skinny man spoke, he shook his head and sighed. Yang Qin looked at the Long Yuan sword and muttered, I wonder who will be able to keep this Long Yuan sword in the future. Haha, the Tianling royal family has Taizu blood in them, but they still haven't succeeded in thousands of years, let alone others? Qin'er, let's not think about this. The treasure-gathering toad indicated that there are treasures around the Long Yuan sword. Let's hurry over. Yang Qin'er smiled and nodded. Okay. Chu Luiyue walked forward alone. Although Yang Qin'er and the rest were quite far away from her, it was obvious that their destination was also the Long Yuan sword. She just didn't know if they were here for the divine beast skeleton. Can you find out what divine beast skeleton is now? Chu Luiyue asked in her heart. Not yet. The Long Yuan sword has completely suppressed it, leaving no leeway. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice became much more serious. But I sense the aura of a heavenly Tao. Chu Luiyue was slightly shocked. Heavenly Tao? Could it be the heavenly Tao that Taizu summoned back then? Not exactly. The aura of the heavenly Tao is very weak. There should be a portion that has scattered elsewhere. Chu Luiyue nodded. This was the same as what was said in the secret scroll. It was quite strange. In the eyes of ordinary people, the heavenly Tao is unreachable, but she already had two in her body. One came from the god-stunning art, and the other came from the contract with the legendary three-eyed eagle. But this power didn't have any effect in her body. It didn't have any sense of existence. On the other side, Yang Qin'er and the rest had just walked to a certain place. Qi. A sword aura suddenly appeared. I'll do it. The lanky man shouted and stabbed the sword in his hand. He actually planned to fight the black sword aura head-on. Ding! The two sword auras collided. There was a crisp sound. The black sword aura suddenly stopped. A smug smile appeared on the lanky man's face. But the next moment, the smile froze on his face. Because the power contained in the black sword aura was far beyond his imagination. Buzz! The black sword aura pressed against the tip of his sword, causing the sword in his hand to vibrate violently. Soon even his arm started to tremble. Poof! His palm immediately ruptured and blood flowed out. This was just a sword aura from the Long Yuan sword. But it actually contained such a shocking and sharp sword intent. The all-encompassing sharp aura was like an invisible net, enveloping the tall and skinny man within. Crack! A crack actually appeared on his sword. Retreat! He was greatly shocked and immediately retreated with a roar. Yang Qin'er hurriedly retreated. The bearded man rushed forward with his sword. A broadsword directly slashed towards the sword aura. But in the next moment, his broadsword was directly repelled. Even he took a few steps back. He spat out blood. In the blink of an eye, both men were injured. The lanky man's sword directly shattered. Boom! The few of them narrowly avoided it, and the black sword aura was finally nailed to an empty space. A deep crater was blasted into the cracked ground by that terrifying force. The three of them were still in shock, and their faces were filled with fear. A sword aura was actually so terrifying. Look! Chu Luiyue actually blocked that sword aura. Yang Qin'er suddenly looked up and exclaimed. The two men turned their heads, and indeed saw a black sword aura dissipating not far from Chu Luiyue. Silver flowing light slowly flowed in front of her. That's the colored glass realm. How is that possible? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 510. That round silver transparent barrier did indeed look like a glazed barrier. But how could it block this terrifying sword aura? It was not that they had never seen a crystal barrier before, but it was impossible for that thing to have such defensive power. After all, the two of them had to join forces to barely block that sword aura. The three of them looked at each other. Other than Yang Qin, who was slightly better off, the other two were in a sorry state. The bearded man was injured, and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. As for the skinny man, his sword was completely destroyed. As disciples of the Purple Shao Sword sect, they were best at using swords. Now that their swords were gone, it was undoubtedly a huge blow to them. What should we do? The skinny man retracted his gaze and looked at his right hand in a daze. This was a top-notch sword, but now there was only a broken sword hilt left. It looked extremely pathetic. One sword aura had forced them to such a state. If they continued to move forward, no wonder there are these human bones. Yang Qin looked worried. It seems that they were all injured by the sword aura. The few of them fell silent. His previous lofty aspirations had already vanished into thin air. Reality was always the cruelest. There is definitely more than one sword aura. This is the base of the Long Yuan sword. This sword aura is its warning. The bearded man looked up at the Long Yuan sword. The excitement and anticipation from before were all gone. Only anxiety and uneasiness were left on his face, as well as deep fear. The deeper we go, the more dangerous it is. We might even lose our lives. Needless to say, everyone understood. Boom! There was an explosion. The sword aura in front of Chu Luyue had dissipated. Then why is Chu Luyue safe and sound? Yang Qin seemed to be talking to herself as she asked. I have used a crystal barrier before, but it seems hers is different. The two men looked at each other. Actually, they could see it too. How could an ordinary crystal barrier be so powerful? There was obviously something strange about her. Yang Qin took out gauze and carefully bandaged the skinny man's hand. Her eyes were red. Senior brother was injured because of me. If only I could be as powerful as Chu Luyue. Her words instantly reminded the two men. How is she powerful? It's her crystal barrier that's powerful. The bearded man was a little disdainful and resentful. No wonder she refused to go with us. It's because of this. Didn't they say that Chu Luyue came from an ordinary background? How can there be such a powerful yuan instrument? The skinny man stared at Chu Luyue anxiously. When he saw her putting away the crystal barrier, his expression changed slightly. Does she have a powerful background? Yang Qin thought. I think it's related to young Master Jian from Dragon Teeth Mountain. Jian Fengqi. When the two men mentioned this name, they were both filled with disdain and jealousy. There's nothing impressive about Jian Fengqi. He's just relying on his good background. The skinny man said and gave the bearded man a look. Since we're here, how can we go back like this? The bearded man nodded slightly. We have to think of a way. Chu Luyue put away the item. She had just taken 2 steps when she felt a movement from the side. She abruptly turned her head and saw the 3 of them heading towards her. Compared to the beginning, they looked much worse for wear now. It was obvious that they were at a disadvantage just now. Miss Chu, we have something to discuss with you. Yang Qin said softly. She looked a little nervous, as if she would be frightened if she spoke louder. Chu Luyue didn't say anything. She lifted her chin. Yang Qin clasped her hands together and asked nervously. We saw that you blocked the sword qi just now. So we want to ask if you can help us? Chu Luyue had already guessed their intentions in her heart, but she still asked them. Help you with what? Yang Qin paused. It's just, can you bring us along? Don't worry, we won't let you help us for nothing. As long as you can lead us to avoid these sword qis, we'll definitely repay you well. If we find any treasures, you can pick first. After we get out, we'll also reward you handsomely. What do you think? How about this? The tall and thin man next to him added. That's right. The people of the Purple Shao Sword sect always keep their promises. Chu Luiyue almost laughed out loud. How shameless. She asked that question on purpose to see how shameless these people were. She didn't expect them to really say that. They were clearly asking for help. But their attitude was so high that it was as if they were giving alms. She was still smiling, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. I think I've made it very clear just now. It's not convenient for me to travel with you. So forget it. The few of them were dumbfounded. They didn't expect that Chu Luiyue would refuse to help after taking the initiative to offer such a condition. Moreover, they even mentioned the Purple Shao Sword sect. She didn't take them seriously at all. The bearded man's expression turned ugly. Miss Chu, are you sure? We offered to help you just now. Isn't it inappropriate for you to do this now? Chu Luiyue asked. But I didn't ask you to help me just now. Also, I didn't accept your help. It's not like I owe you anything, right? The bearded man suddenly sneered. The people brought by Jian Fengqi are indeed as selfish as him. If you really refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit, then don't blame us for being rude. The smile on Chu Luiyue's face gradually faded, as if a layer of frost had condensed. There was a faint coldness in her eyes, but it was bone-chilling. Are you serious? Digression. Insomnia bird yesterday. My period was tormenting me to death. I'm going to have breakfast and come back to continue the update. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 511. It was fine if he scolded Jian Fengqi, but she couldn't tolerate it if he scolded her as well. The bearded man was shocked by Chu Luiyue's expression and felt uneasy. However, on second thought, any one of the three of them could easily defeat Chu Luiyue, let alone working together. Chu Luiyue was simply courting death if she went against the three of them alone. Moreover, Jian Fengqi wasn't here now, so they had nothing to be afraid of. Yang Qiner didn't seem to give up. Miss Chu, we don't mean any harm. We really just want to ask for your help. Both of our senior brothers are injured. What does their injuries have to do with me? Chu Luiyue interrupted Yang Qiner impatiently. If I remember correctly, when the two of them went forward to resist the sword aura, you dodged it. Yang Qiner's expression changed slightly. She didn't expect Chu Luiyue to see that. You're their junior sister. If you don't help, why should I? Do I look that stupid? Chu Luiyue said word by word. She spoke slowly and calmly, but to the three of them, it was extremely ear-piercing. Yang Qiner's face flushed red, and her eyes were filled with tears. I. Her appearance immediately caused the two men to have tender feelings for her. The lanky man frowned and shouted at Chu Luiyue. What do you know? The situation was critical at that time. We asked her to retreat, so she retreated. Otherwise, the three of us would be injured now. Chu Luiyue, don't sow discord here. Yang Qiner quickly pulled him back. Senior brothers, it's all my fault. Don't be angry. Chu Luiyue shrugged. If there were people who didn't want their brains or their lives, why should she waste her breath? It's up to you to say whatever you want. I still have something to do, so I'll leave first. With that, Chu Luiyue lifted her feet and was about to walk around them. The bearded man's face was gloomy as he stood in front of her. Who said that you can leave? Chu Luiyue looked up at the arrogant and gloomy man in front of her and smiled. This casual and contemptuous smile immediately angered the bearded man. He raised the broadsword in his hand and stabbed it at Chu Luiyue. Today, I'll let you know that there are some people you can never offend. As he said that, his wrist turned his wrist. The sword was actually stabbed at Chu Luiyue's left hand. He's his attack. Chu Luiyue's gaze turned increasingly cold as she suddenly threw the dagger in her right hand out. With a crisp sound, the broadsword was easily knocked askew by the dagger. The bearded man asked, His. How dare you? Although he didn't have a sword and his combat power was greatly reduced, it was more than enough for him to deal with a rank 3 warrior with his early stage rank 6 strength. He shouted as his palm turned into a fist and punched towards Chu Luiyue's back. The fist was strong. Chu Luiyue took the chance and rushed forward. Her footsteps staggered, and she crashed into the bearded man's chest. Before he could react, she grabbed his arm and turned him around forcefully. This time, the bearded man became Chu Liyue's shield. The skinny man saw the situation and hurriedly wanted to withdraw his attack. But his fist was already out. Forcefully withdrawing it would cause a huge backlash. The bearded man had no choice but to take the punch. His right hand, which was holding the sword, was completely numb. He could only use his left hand to deal with Chu Liyue and choked her neck. Just at this moment, Chu Liyue's elbow struck backwards. A heavy blow landed on the bearded man's ribs. The bearded man bent over in pain. He was so angry that he wished he could kill Chu Liyue. But Chu Liyue was faster than him. Her hand almost chopped off the bearded man's right wrist. The broadsword in his hand immediately fell. Yang Qin knew something was wrong and wanted to rush forward. Chu Liyue took the chance to break free from the bearded man's control. She turned around and gave a flying kick. She kicked the bearded man directly onto the skinny man. The two of them collided. Chu Liyue tiptoed, and the broadsword was already in her hands. Yang Qin wanted to stop, but Chu Liyue glanced at her with a half-smile, which made her feel guilty. She pulled out a sword from her waist and gritted her teeth as she rushed towards Chu Liyue. But Chu Liyue did not want to waste time on her and attacked first. The broadsword was very heavy, but Chu Liyue held it in her hands as if it was weightless. After being tempered by the water droplets a few times, her physical strength had far exceeded her expectations. The next moment, she went forward and knocked Yang Qin's sword away before she could circulate her force. Yang Qin cried out in pain as a wound appeared on her arm. Chu Liyue did not continue fighting. She immediately retreated after her attack. The force in her body surged rapidly. Chu Liyue was surprised to find that her speed seemed to have increased a little, because the surrounding force of heaven and earth kept flowing into her body and cleansing it. She rushed towards the long yuan sword in a spurt of energy. Yang Qin wanted to chase after her, but when she saw the huge long yuan sword and felt the deep and majestic aura, she felt a little guilty. She turned around and rushed to the side of the two people. Senior brother Qin is useless. I couldn't catch up to her. She intentionally showed the wound on her arm to the two people. The two people did not suspect anything and hated Chu Liyue even more. This Chu Liyue is really cunning. If we weren't injured by the sword chi just now, she definitely wouldn't have escaped. The bearded man spat out a mouthful of blood and said hatefully. The skinny and tall man blamed himself and felt guilty for accidentally injuring his fellow disciple. He also pushed all the blame to Chu Liyue. When we meet her again, we definitely won't let her have an easy time. Yang Qin looked down, and a look of disdain flashed across her eyes. She had her concerns, and did not use her full strength. However, these two people were not weak, and yet they were so useless. Although the disciples of such a big sect were outstanding, their combat power might not be good. It was fine if they had a competition, but now that they met a ruthless person like Chu Liyue, who had been through life and death situations, they immediately fell into a disadvantage. She coughed and reminded them gently, "Senior brother, now that she has left, are we still chasing after her?" The two men instantly fell silent. If it were before, they would definitely say yes. But now, seeing the long yuan sword again, they were a little scared. After a while, the bearded man said, "We are all injured. All of us are injured. Why don't we treat our wounds here first and rest until we're in our best condition before heading inside?" The skinny and tall man had no objections and immediately agreed. Although Yang Qin was unwilling, she could not refuse and could only follow. On the other side, Chu Liyue had the help of the crystal barrier and could be considered to be unobstructed. She was getting closer and closer to the long yuan sword. When she got closer, she finally saw that the long yuan sword was surrounded by a huge crater. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A heavy, desolate, and solemn pressure enveloped him. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 512. The sinkhole was filled with gullies, and countless black sword chi collided back and forth. The cold and hard ground and stones were full of sword marks. Standing on top and looking down, it was a shocking sight. Chu Liyue sucked in a cold breath. The Long Yuan sword had been here for thousands of years. Perhaps this sinkhole was caused by the accumulation of its sword qi. Just standing on the side, one could feel the overwhelming sword intent. The most important thing was that Chu Liyue only realized that the gigantic Long Yuan sword on the ground was only a small part of its original body when she arrived at this place. Adding the part exposed in this sinkhole, it seemed to be less than half of the entire Long Yuan sword. It was majestic and magnificent, unparalleled and unparalleled. Thousands of years of wind and rain didn't leave a single mark on the black sword. Looking at it closely, it was still as smooth and sharp as if it had just been sharpened. And that pressure was coming from above. Chu Liyue looked over and carefully looked at this legendary divine sword. This was the sword that opened up the entire Tianling dynasty, Taizu's sword. Her heart suddenly surged with complicated emotions. Admiration, respect, lamentation. Although she was standing here with another person's identity, she knew very well that this was her ancestor. As long as she thought of this, the blood in her body seemed to flow faster, and her heart beat wildly. The divine beast skeleton is under the Long Yuan sword. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice suddenly sounded. Chu Liyue immediately woke up and looked down again. In the sinkhole, there was nothing else except for the Long Yuan sword that was half buried in the ground. Chu Liyue frowned and asked, "You said it's under the Long Yuan sword. It can't be under the ground, right?" The legendary three-eyed eagle asked. "Did you only know now?" Chu Liyue. "Then how do I get it? Not to mention that I can't go down underground. I can't even go down in this sinkhole with sword qi." She meant what she said. With those streaks of black sword qi, she would be turned into a sieve the moment she went down. Even if she had the colored glass barrier, she couldn't guarantee that she could withstand the attacks of over 1,000 sword qis at the same time. The legendary three-eyed eagle said, "I will protect you." Chu Liyue's eyebrows twitched violently. "So, you can clearly deal with these sword energies, but you've been watching from the sidelines? After forming a contract with me, didn't you say that your mental state improved too quickly, and your foundation wasn't solid enough, so you wanted to find an opportunity to practice?" The legendary three-eyed eagle said confidently, "This opportunity is quite rare. Wasn't that right, Chu Liyue?" She held her aching forehead. Why had no one ever told her that mythical beasts could also be crazy? The legendary three-eyed eagle asked again, "Why? Don't you like it?" Chu Liyue gritted his teeth. "I like it. I love it so much." Only then was the legendary three-eyed eagle satisfied. "Get ready." Chu Liyue immediately put away his emotions and became alert. Since she had promised the legendary three-eyed eagle to help it recover its physical body, then this trip, she had to go. In the next moment, a black phantom appeared in front of Chu Liyue. He hugged his wings and closed his eyes tightly. The pressure was overwhelming. It was the legendary three-eyed eagle. Voila! Huge wings spread out. Chu Liyue felt as if the sky in front of him had darkened for a moment. She stared at the illusion in front of her. Obviously, compared to the previous few times, the illusion this time was much more solid. She could even see every single feather on it. She sensed a familiar aura from the phantom. "This is the power of the heavenly Tao," Chu Liyue murmured. The legendary three-eyed eagle suddenly opened its eyes. Those eyes were still scarlet red, but the bloody and fierce aura that filled them had almost completely dissipated. Moreover, it faintly emitted a supreme and noble aura. Chu Liyue knew that this was the aura that truly belonged to the legendary three-eyed eagle. That's right. The legendary three-eyed eagle and Chu Liyue were telepathically connected. They did not need to speak to understand each other's thoughts. "After forming a contract with you, my soul has been nourished by the heavenly Tao and has recovered a lot." Chu Liyue clicked her tongue in amazement. In that case, forming a contract between a divine beast and a human is not completely without benefits. The legendary three-eyed eagle looked at her and hesitated. At this time, Chu Liyue still did not know that not everyone could form a contract with a divine beast. Many of them could not withstand the pressure of the divine beast and the heavenly Tao and died directly. And even if the contract was successful, the heavenly Tao would appear and after the contract was completed, it would dissipate, leaving behind a tiny bit of power that was not worth mentioning. For Chu Luyue to form a contract with the divine beast, summon the heavenly Tao and absorb it into her body, he was the only one. At least in the legendary three-eyed eagle's bloodline memory, such a thing had never happened before. However, it did not intend to tell Chu Luyue about this for the time being. Come up. The legendary three-eyed eagle lowered its wings. Chu Luyue jumped up. My phantom is mainly formed by the soul, and is formed by the force of heaven and earth. It can only last for a limited time. Remember to hold on tight. Chu Luyue nodded with a grave expression. The legendary three-eyed eagle flapped its wings and swooped down. Just as Chu Luyue rushed into the crater, Yang Qin and the others on the other side had finally finished resting and were ready to set off again. The lanky man said in a deep voice, "If we meet Chu Luyue again, we must not give her any chance to escape." However, just as they walked for a distance, a woman's voice came from behind them. "May I ask if you are disciples of the Purple Shao Sword sect?" They turned around and saw a young woman. "You are." The woman smiled and said, "I am Ning Jiaojiao of the Profound Wind Hall." The few of them looked at each other. The Profound Wind Hall and the Purple Shao Sword sect had always minded their own business. As for this Ning Jiaojiao, she seemed to be the young mistress of the Profound Wind Hall. "So it's Miss Ning." Ning Jiaojiao saw that they were on guard and didn't mind. She asked tentatively, "Just now, I think I heard the three of you talking about Chu Luyue?" Yang Qin's eyes flickered, and she immediately said, "Miss Ning, you heard wrongly." Ning Jiaojiao's gaze swept across the few of them and smiled meaningfully. "So I misunderstood. I thought that the injuries on your bodies were caused by Chu Luyue. However, if it was really her, you should have been chased out of the Tianling God realm by now." Yang Qin and the others looked at each other. "What do you mean, Miss Ning?" Ning Jiaojiao was stunned and covered her mouth, as if she felt that she had said too much. Nothing. But after hesitating for a moment, she still made up her mind and said, "Sai, actually it's not a big deal. It's just that Chu Luyue, for some reason, she has been killing the other contestants. Along the way, she has already forced a few people out of the Tianling God realm. I'm a little scared." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.